Good morning. Good morning. It is 9:01, and I just would like to call the Ventura County Election Advisory Committee meeting to order.
I'll now take a roll call. Committee Member Patterson.
Here.
Committee Member Gooch.
Here.
Committee Member Espinoisa.
Here.
Committee Member Cohen.
Here.
Committee Member Frank.
Here.
Thank you. Please stand if able and for the Pledge of Allegiance. Repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the committee members remain standing? I will now place the committee members under oath. Please raise your right arm and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Deirdre,
Espinoisa,
Do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend
do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the State of California
the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
That I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely
I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
without any reservation or purpose of evasion,
And that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations. Next on our agenda is item number 5, election of the chair and vice chair of the Ventura County Election Advisory Committee.
Oh, yes.
We do have a public comment for this item. Can you speak up? We can't hear you. It's the mic. We have a public comment for item number 5. Our first speaker is going to be Stephen Weed. Mr. Weed, you'll have 2 minutes to give your comment. Please proceed to the podium.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Weed. I live in Oakview. The chair needs to understand how to run a meeting effectively. Given the topic at hand, it makes sense to choose a chair without the appearance of bias. Now, the second point, it's going to be impossible for several reasons, but I'm not going to belabor that. But I find myself wondering how this committee will differ from how the many topics related to elections that they handled in Board of Supervisors meetings. In the BOS meetings, speakers say what they will, regardless of their own ideas. But without additional dialogue, those listening find it all too easy to ascribe motive and discount what's being said. So some may lose confidence in the election due to that dialogue not being there. But it's interesting to note that even so, the 2024 elections had a 75% turnout with over 394,000 ballots cast. So if the goal of these committee meetings is to reassure voters, then points made by opposite sides need to be understood and explored. So to whoever chairs these meetings, I ask that you use your own discretion and do something that's unconventional. After a speaker finishes, would it be possible for the chair to ask to get some context? And again, this is discretionary, but when it fits, perhaps a chair could reply to comments like this. Thank you for your comments. Are you able to say more about your experiences or how you developed your ideas? And that hopefully will create more robust and equitable dialogue around this issue. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And that concludes our public comment for item number 5.
So committee members, if you'd like to nominate one of your members as chair of the committee, we would take motions for the chair at this time.
Can I go ahead?
Go ahead.
Yes, I would like to nominate Herbert Gooch as chair.
I'll second.
right, so we have a motion by committee member Cohen, second by committee member Frank, to nominate Herbert Gooch as chair of the committee. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, that passes unanimously.
Are you sure?
Mr. Gooch, are you willing to serve as chair? Great, thank you.
All right, and then at this time, we will entertain motions for vice chair of the committee who will serve in the absence of the chair.
Can I go?
Go ahead.
I would actually like to nominate myself, Debbie Cohen, as vice chair.
Is there a second?
Do we have a second to the
I think Mr. Louise does it.
I'm going to make a separate nomination.
Hearing no second, the motion by committee member Cohen fails for lack of a second. Is there any other nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Deirdre Frank as chair, or vice chair, excuse me.
Is there any seconds to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Apologize for the delay, we're just making sure to document these decisions properly.
Testing. Committee members, to ensure that everyone can hear, can you please bring your microphones closer to you when you're speaking? Thank you.
How is that?
Much better. Thank you. No. Not really.
Test, test, test. This is
Member Cohen, I can hear you. Thank you so much.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Committee Member Patterson. Thank you. Committee Member Gooch, yours is working too. Thank you.
Mine's okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor by committee member Espinoisa, second by committee member Frank, to nominate Deirdre Frank as vice chair of the committee. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions?
I'm opposed.
That motion passes with 4 in favor and 1 opposed. Chair Gooch will turn it over to you to run through the remainder of the agenda, but we are here to assist as needed.
Where would we start then at?
We're at item number 6.
Yeah. Let me call on Supervisor Burrell, who would like to make some comments.
Good morning, everybody. How's everyone doing? Can you hear me back there? All right. All right, we got some quiet talkers today. Don't feel free to speak up, everyone. I think it's difficult to hear in the back.
It is.
All right. Yeah, I'm hearing that in the back of the room. So feel free to talk right into the microphone. And I wanted to say good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Gorell. I am a county supervisor representing the beautiful 2nd District of beautiful Ventura County. I also serve as vice chair of the Board of Supervisors, which that position makes me the liaison to this election advisory committee, and I'm honored to do some very brief opening remarks about today. First of all, good morning and welcome, everybody. Appreciate the attendance and the participation. I want to start by thanking the clerk and the clerk's team. I want to thank the County Council, Tiffany North, the CEO, Dr. Sylvette Johnson, for their effort in getting us here today and bringing this committee to life and helping organize the very first inaugural meeting of the Elections Committee. I also want to thank our clerk recorder, Michelle Ascension, and her entire team for their work to ensure transparent, secure, and accessible elections. The purpose of this committee, I think it's important to restate, is not here to replace or duplicate that work. This committee exists to strengthen it. It creates another structured way for residents to participate and provide input on elections. There are more than 20 advisory committees throughout the county government here in Ventura County. And from everything from behavioral health, Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. I've got 4 community advisory councils in my district. They're enormously helpful. So often people come to our board meetings and they share concerns or they share support for the way that the process is being handled in our county elections. And because of the Brown Act, most of the time, almost 100% of the time, we, the Board of Supervisors, are unable to respond to them on the record or at the meeting. This committee is a vehicle for folks to be able to share their thoughts, their inspirations, their concerns, the things they think are working fantastic, maybe things they think could work better, and now there's a vehicle for that body to respond and to evaluate and to advise, ultimately, the Board of Supervisors and the clerk recorder. So I'm excited about today. Advisory bodies deepen democracy. They provide another vehicle for the community that we all work for to share their thoughts. They strengthen community trust, and they improve local decision making. This committee will do the same for elections in Ventura County, I'm sure. The Election Advisory Committee will provide a formal and ongoing forum for residents to share input on the elections process, will strengthen transparency and public confidence while offering constructive feedback to both the Board of Supervisors and the Clerk Recorder's Office, as I mentioned. This body is advisory only, just to remind everyone, and in full respect of the Clerk Recorder's authority and the Board's legal role in the county. I want to conclude by thanking you, the 5 of you, for your commitment to this county, for your service, for your commitment to succeed, and for joining this leadership opportunity. I want to thank you for volunteering your time. It's a sacrifice. You're bringing your expertise to this effort, and your service will help strengthen our democracy and build greater trust in our local elections. And for that, I am grateful for myself and on behalf of the 5-member Board of Supervisors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we should move on to public comment.
Chair, we'll be at item 7, agenda review.
Sorry.
We really can't hear any of it.
Okay. We're going to go into item 7, agenda review, where we consider and approve it, and by majority vote, if there are any revisions, we approve.
Chair Gooch, we did receive 12 public comment letters that have been submitted for item number 8, public comment.
I thought we were on agenda review.
Yes, this is for agenda review. So after the agenda was released, we received 12 public comment letters that have been submitted for item number 8.
So your committee would take a motion to approve the agenda as modified with those additional comment letters.
So moved.
Can I actually ask a question before we do that? I don't know if this is on, I'm sorry, it's hard for me to tell. It was actually in regards to the previous an item where we elected the chair and vice chair, and it has to do with the agenda. I believe that in the agenda, it states that this time period for serving as chair and vice chair will be through the end of 2026, but in the resolution, it says that we need to elect a new vice chair and chair at the beginning, the first meeting of every calendar year. So that is in conflict, and so I'm wondering why it was stated that way.
Recognizing that this is not a complete full year, that this is the meeting that's happening, that was why, so it's to be continued through all of 2026.
Okay, is that okay with?
That's okay with, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for clarification. So again, we're going to review Do we need a motion?
The motion's been made, right?
Correct. So we have a motion by committee member Frank to approve the agenda as modified, and we need a second to that motion.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion by committee member Frank, second by committee member Espinoisa. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. That completes this agenda item, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we'll move on to public comment and note that people have submitted cards and they are limited to no more than 2 minutes per speaker unless modified by the chair. Public comments under this agenda item may also be moved to the end of the meeting. What I'd like to do then is to open up to public comment.
Thank you, Chair Gooch. And as just a reminder to members here who wish to give public comment, please complete one of the green speaker cards on the table and check in with the deputy clerk. We will add you to our queue, and you will have 2 minutes to give your comment. When I call your name, please proceed to the podium.
Can I make a comment before we receive public comments? Thank you. 2 comments, actually. First of all, I'd like to request that the chair extend the public comment time to 3 minutes. I think that this is a very important, one of our most important roles in this committee is to hear from the public, and I think 2 minutes is not sufficient, and so I'd like to request that we extend it to 3.
Do this as a
My thinking on this is, in looking around the room, I think we could accommodate a 3-minute time. Obviously, if we were jam-packed, overflowing into the hallway, we'd have to limit speakers' time, but, given the numbers we have here, I think 3 minutes would be appropriate.
Thank you, Committee Member Cohen and Frank. We do have currently 15 speakers who have signed up to request to speak, and that's going to defer to Chair Gooch.
Oh boy, I get to make my first major decision. What I'd like to ask for is a consensus of the committee. Anyone have a comment on this before? I'm really open to suggestions.
I would say let's stay with the 2 minutes for this meeting. This is our first meeting. We have no idea what is going to be coming and how we need to address these issues. So my recommendation was for this first meeting, we can stay at 2 minutes. We can change it at other meetings.
Any other comment?
I would support that thought, just to, since this is how it's initiated, just to see how the meeting flows and how much time the speakers have actually needed, and whether we run short, we can make that change to future meeting.
And I would just like to reiterate that one of the primary reasons we're here is to hear from the public. And so I think that there's no more important thing than we can do as a committee other than hear from the public and get their input. So I'd like to just reiterate my request for 3.
And I'm flexible, actually, either way. I go with the flow. So we have 2 minutes for our inaugural meeting. We can see how it goes. And, we can always modify it later. So 2 minutes is fine with me too.
I would want to continue on with the 2 minutes, mostly because I suspect that many of the people that are going to make comments that already were aware and plan to make 2 minutes anyway. I like the idea that we may need to change that later, but it seems the consensus is to keep the 2 minutes, which I agree with.
Thank you, Chair Gooch. We will keep the time at 2 minutes. I will call your names, and then please proceed to the podium.
I have
and
one
you'll
other.
2 minutes to your comment.
I'm so sorry. I don't mean to take over. I have one other thing to add. 2 actually other things to add. There's been a letter submitted for public comment that actually had my name signed at the bottom along with several others. And I don't know how to do this, but I'd like to just withdraw my name from that as submitted to this committee if that's possible. The letter was intended to go to the Board of Supervisors, and it also got copied to this committee, and I don't think that that's appropriate for my name to be on there, so.
Thank you for that comment. The letter is submitted and is part of the record, but we will make the notation now that you have said that you did not authorize the submittal of that, or your name being on it for this committee.
Thank you. And one more thing, I would like to make a motion that in the future we open these public comments to people to be able to comment via Zoom if possible. And
I think that your commenting and your suggestions right now are out of order. We're here for public comment. Later in the agenda, we have an opportunity for committee members to submit requests to add items to future agendas. So
That's correct.
I'd like to stay on track.
Okay, we will move forward with the public speakers at this point.
Thank you. Okay, our first speaker today is going to be Leslie Rule, followed by Stephen Weed, and then Scott Harris.
Good morning and welcome to all of you. I am pleased also to have this committee, this advisory committee. My name is Leslie Rule. I am a city council member in Ojai, although I am speaking only for myself and my neighbors. I have been to a couple of supervisors meetings where there have been call-ins and the information has been absolutely incorrect, one of them being that we are the only country that does mail-in votes, etc. And at the time I felt compelled to stand up at that public comment and say, that's not true, and I'm hoping that this advisory committee actually looks at the facts of the matter and doesn't take talking points as true. One of the things I did want to talk about was voter identification and access. Both the League of Women Voters and the Brennan Center for Justice say that there is no voter identification problem, and there is a disagreement pitting concerns against fraud and fears of voter suppression. Supporters believe that, voter impersonation helps, can help restore public confidence in elections if you actually do strengthen those kinds of things. Critics argue that voter impersonation is extremely rare, and this continues to be a contentious political issue. So I would ask you to think strongly about that. Most times there are false claims of fraud, and what really happens when, for instance, you restrict mail-in votes and things like that, it's really suppression efforts. And people will look at it as that, because there is no evidence that there is mail-in fraud. There is none. That it makes any kind of difference whatsoever. And my other concern is, if you were to deal with, I got 11 seconds, like I know that because I sit here all the time, I'm worried about harassment at polling places. So I really think that you should look at that, because that will keep people from coming out. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is going to be Stephen Weed, followed by Scott Harris, and then Bruce McVicker.
Glad I moved it up. Good morning again, Stephen Weed for the record. As a reference, I've worked as a temporary worker for 5 election cycles here in Ventura, both in the voting centers and at the government center. The most important thing from this committee is that the findings of the committee be made public in an impartial way and organized in a way so that voters can actually digest the information. If there's recommendations, they should include how the issue is identified, researched, whatever it may be, the likelihood of fraud and abuse without a change, and the possible steps for the registrar to resolve the concerns. As an example, the veracity of the Dominion equipment may be discussed. My experience indicates that there is no evidence of fraud and there are sufficient safeguards in place. Those who argue otherwise either do not know enough or are making faulty assumptions. Some of the written comments for this meeting illustrate that point. For other issues such as voter ID, when someone votes in person, I believe there are ways to address concerns, several different ways. But at worst, this is a mild concern in my opinion, with no history of systemic abuse. The challenge with any of these recommendations to the registrar's office is that Michelle Ascension and her staff have taken their fair share of flack over a variety of issues. The County Elections Division is complying with state laws. And with so many recommendations, good, bad, or otherwise, it's understandable if they do not consider any recommendations at this time. So this committee has a difficult challenge in reassuring voters. Best of luck to you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is going to be Scott Harris, followed by Bruce McVicker, and then Julian Case.
Thank you very much. I am Scott Harris from the city of Ventura, and I am here today as a friend of fair and honest elections, elections that enjoy the greatest possible participation by legal voters. I am here to respond to some of the written comments that have been received and are in the record, and I hope that our verbal comments will also make the record. I think that we all agree that fair and honest elections are the foundation on which upon our democracy stands, and I hope that we can all agree that the most representative elections are when the greatest number of legal voters participate. Our elected representatives in Sacramento passed the Voters' Choice Act, Senate Bill 450 until 2016. Known as the VCA, this legislation encourages election participation by extending voting days, providing conventional ballot drop-off locations, convenient ballot drop-off locations, and making voting by mail available to every registered voter. Additionally, our Sacramento representatives saw disturbing signs in some municipalities to restrict voting access by demanding voters present ID at the polls on election day. Our representatives passed Senate Bill 1174 in 2024 to prohibit a local government from enacting or enforcing any kind of restriction on voting day at the polls. I have read the written comments submitted today to this committee, and they have common themes. Without substantiation, they claim that voting protection protocols were violated by Ventura County and during our most recent election in 2024, that mysterious boxes used to collect and tabulate our electronic votes cannot be trusted, and that the current process of registering and voting is a subject to fraud. Getting back to the Voters' Choice Act, which we follow in Ventura County, the County of Ventura recorded a voter participation of 75%, which is versus the national.
Thank you, Mr. Harris, for your comment.
Thank you.
Mr. McVicker, we do have seating in the front if you would like to sit. There's a couple seats there in the front row for the people that are standing. I just wanted to let you know that.
May I inquire, Mr. Harris, did you submit your written comment?
No, I have not, but if I may, after the meeting, I would like to.
Since you didn't have an opportunity to finish and I saw you were reading from a written statement, I would like you to put that in.
I will submit it after the meeting.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McVicker. Please proceed.
Good morning. As an observer, I've witnessed security breaches of the vote-by-mail processing and the ICC scanner rooms. Both of these areas are secure with special badges to gain access. On occasion, an employee with a badge would let other employees into the area without scanning or filling out an entry-exit log. We can do better. I also observed that network cables connected to the Interscan PCs in the ICC scanner room go underneath a false floor. How do we know that these are not connected to any other network besides the ICC server? We can do better. As an observer during the LAT, I saw that USB memory sticks were inserted into each touchscreen computer, and an HP printer produced the QR code ballots. After the LAT was complete, touchscreen computers were reprogrammed using other USB sticks for the upcoming election. Are all of these USB sticks inspected to ensure there are no Trojan horse applications that can infect the system and affect the vote? We can do better. Some of the printers had anti-tamper seals that were broken. Are maintenance logs available for any of the equipment? Printers I could see were manufactured in the Philippines and sourced from China, where final firmware is installed. Then the printer is tested prior to shipping from China. These printers may even be smartphone compatible. Can these printers insert malware into the system? Is this a violation of the Federal Information Security Modernization Act? We can do better. The VCEAC should start planning for better. Better is one-day precinct-level in-person voting with absentee provisions, secure paper ballots, hand-counted, recorded with video and audio documentation. EO 14248 says the EAC and Homeland Security shall report on the security of all electronic systems used in the voting process. I predict an upgrade for security. bring back better security.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. McVicker. Our next speaker is going to be Julian Case, followed by Jim, and then Mary Gallegos.
Hi, I'm Julianne Case. This is the philosophical. I'm going to ask you all to do something that may go against your grain. Why do I say that? Because I found it hard to do it, especially the first time. It gets easier each time you do it. Let go of needing to be right. Really work to look at the angles of an issue. You might be surprised. Put your bias aside if you have one, and pretend you believe the opposite. Work to prove and disprove each side. We need to do this because our cities, counties, and country need free and fair elections with officials that are truly elected by the citizens. I have a list of items that you can start with. I've handed that to you already. I have a copy for each of you. When you close your mind to other information, you're hurting yourself as well as the rest of us. Look for ways to meet in the middle. Be willing to listen to each other with an open mind. Always asking, what can I learn from this? How can I contribute? Also ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? Will it kill you to change your position? Can you live with your position? Can you live with being wrong? It's a momentary feeling, I've learned. You won't get awards for being right. You will get awards for finding truth and solutions. If you can't set aside your bias at all, then consider stepping down for the sake of the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is going to be Jim, followed by Mary Gallegos, and then Gloria Herbert.
Good morning. Good morning, Supervisor Burrell and newly elected members of the Election Advisory Committee. I want to speak to California Election Code Section 15104, which in part says, quote, individuals and organizations are permitted to observe, end quote. I submit that observing in the Elections Division does not mean being able to see, not being able to see the work that is being performed. A few years ago, I was in the observer areas near the computer workstation. I could see that a worksheet was on the monitor. I couldn't read the title, the column headers, or any of the information in the table. Martin Kobos, the operations manager, walked up to me and asked, "You know what you were looking at?" I responded, "Actually, no. I don't know what I'm looking at because I can't read what is on the monitor." He chuckled and he said, "It doesn't have anything to do with this election." Then he turned and walked away. So I would recommend that the EAC members tour the Elections Division. See for yourselves what can be observed or seen or read from those designated observer areas. I would also request that the EAC review the training materials used to teach staff. Workload areas such as signature verification, processing and tabulation of ballots, and ballot adjudication processes. I believe it is appropriate, in fact necessary, that observers have a knowledge of what the staff is actually doing. I strongly encourage the EAC to recommend that observers have access to the training materials that staff are trained to. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Jim. Our next speaker is going to be Mary Gallegos, followed by Gloria Herbert, and then Ken Hurst.
Good morning, and congratulations. I hope you're ready to do some really serious work on our behalf. All right, so yesterday I sent out, or a group of us, there's about 6 of us, sent out a failure report. And we termed it that way because we really feel it is a failure report. And it has to do with the cyber security violations, repeated cyber security violations that we wrote about in 2024. We were diligent. We documented what we saw with accurate information, and we're willing to sign our name to those forms and say what we saw is indeed true and what we are reporting is indeed true. It is evidence. So we put this in for 2024 and we heard back silence. We got silence from the ROV. We got silence from the Board of Supervisors. No one responded. So I'm here again. We're writing this failure report to reacquaint you with the problems that we had in 2024 regarding serious cybersecurity violations that we documented and observed and wrote about. And in the attachments to the failure report, you'll see our words and tell you exactly what we saw. We still feel that those problems we saw in 2024 are unresolved. So I'm telling you now that going forward to 2025 and this next election, any other future elections, we will again report to you in writing what we're seeing, if none of those problems have been resolved, and any new problems we have seen, and then we'll do it in writing, and then we'll now again do it verbally, and then if we can't get any response from you or any others, we will then request a face-to-face with our Board of Supervisors to tell them exactly what we're seeing and why we're so concerned. Our elections are not secure. There are serious fringes on voter rights and election results. You need to pay attention to those. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is going to be Gloria Kerbel, followed by Ken Hurst and Spencer Ritchie.
Good morning. My name is Gloria. Congratulations to all of you. And thank you so much for stepping up. We really need this advisory committee. I have been observing since 2018, and I have seen everything that everyone else has just been up here talking about. And I really encourage you and ask you, if you have never been to the election division or to the poll places to observe, I really request you do this. Because honestly, I don't know where you're at with this, but there's a lot to see and there's a lot to observe, and really the processes too. There's so many processes. We do have cybersecurity issues, and we're still going to continue to be there. We're going to observe, and we're going to document everything that we see. And so I just hope that this committee will be able to, under the approval of the ROV or the Board of Supervisors, will allow you to make some recommendations. I really thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is going to be Ken Hurst, followed by Spencer Ritchie and Steve Alf.
Hello. Is this working? Do I need to get closer?
You can adjust it.
Is that better? Yeah. All right. Thank you for serving on this committee. Unfortunately, the existence of this committee appears at first blush to be an attempt to find a problem, which there is scant evidence for. If you're going to make any recommendations for major changes, first you'll have to establish that there is a problem. It's based on more than rumor, innuendo, and hearsay. Major changes without establishing a problem will only exacerbate the divisions which currently afflict us. I would also comment that there is a lack of online access for this meeting, and for future meetings, I hope you will have online access so that other people who can't be here during working hours and during school hours can follow along. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is going to be Spencer, followed by Steve, and then Wendy Coyle.
Alright. Hello, I'm Spencer Ritchie. Obviously, thank you to the committee for, doing what you do. We all love ourselves and need a secure election. Few issues. One, as for the voter ID thing, we already have really strict laws and safeguards against stuff that, people are saying we need a voter ID for. So voter ID laws are really, they just act as suppression. Two, in general, our voting machines, basically both sides of the aisle, outside of these we need voter ID, we need to get the mail-in voting people, they agree that our county does, elections really well. And the other thing that I'm actually going to build on what the previous commenter said about, there not being a way to access this meeting online, it's not only is that inconvenient for tons of people, but it's also just flat out inaccessible for disabled people. And the calls to end mail-in voting, those are just like that, also inaccessible to disabled people. And you saw that I came in with my ear defenders and my sunglasses that I need to, I needed to wear to not get a migraine in here. And so I've relied on mail-in voting as a disabled person because I can't really handle crowds anymore. And the thing about the most insidious stuff about, suppressing the disabled vote in this matter is that over 1 in 4 Americans are self-declared as disabled. Its number is way more than that, so it's really bad suppression. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is going to be Steve Alf, followed by Wendy Coyle and A. Cultura.
Good morning, and thank you for being here and doing what you're doing for us. I appreciate you very much. I was appalled to find out that we spent $2.6 million on this election cycle that we had now. The voter, that's a lot of money, and I think it could have spent
You know what?
elsewhere.
You know what, sir? You've got to talk into the microphone. I can't hear you at all.
Okay, sorry.
Can I ask a question about the microphone? Does it come out?
It does.
I mean, can people hold it in their hands? Which might be easier than jerking it around.
Okay, now my
There you
time's
go.
almost up. I'm going to go to my conclusion because I want to make sure I get that in there. We're going to talk about solving the problem that we've had, and by returning to what's worked for years: neighborhood voting centers, show your voter ID at paper ballots, and polls closed. No extended votes or vote counts. Announce the results immediately. That's what we need to go back to. That was working for us. We were spending $2.6 million on this situation where people are able to make a fraudulent vote in so many different ways. And I'm going to leave that up to other people to figure out how that is being done. But I was an observer, and I observed some of the things that were happening at the voter center. I volunteered to be an observer, and I watched the signature verification process, and I noticed that the people, they'd have 4 signatures to verify, and they would never look at all of them. They could compare them to other signatures, make sure they were real, but they were not able to do it because there's too many of them to do. So they're not verifying signatures to make sure that the person is who they say they are. So I know that there's going to be a lot more that's going to be said. I'm sorry. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment.
Just set it down. Just lay it down. Yeah. If you just set it down, then people can.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Wendy Coyle, and I want to thank all of you for stepping up to address these concerns, and I especially want to thank Supervisor Burrell for all of his support and work in initiating this meeting. Thank you. And congratulations on this first meeting as well. It's something that I, along with many others, urge the Board of Supervisors to establish to deal with citizen concerns regarding the integrity of our elections, and I'm Really happy that it's begun, especially considering that the special election is coming up soon. At the last election, November 2024, I was an election observer at several Simi Valley locations, including the Reagan Library, the Simi Valley Library, and the Park and Rec headquarters. Despite the fact that we had limited access to actually see what was going on, it was clear that there were issues of concern, which many have reported and submitted these reports of problems, security breaches, cybersecurity problems, etc., to the Registrar of Voters and the Board of Supervisors, County Council, and the Sheriff's Office as well. Despite these reports, no specific action has been taken to address these concerns, and I expect and hope that this committee is going to examine and address these issues that have been raised for over a year before the Board of Supervisors. One major concern of mine that I hope that the EAC will address in a very thorough manner is the use of the Dominion voting systems, which have been found to have serious problems. New evidence has been revealed in a report by an election forensic expert, and I will send the board an email with a link to that video, and it could show that there were problems sufficient to be a breach of contract and require termination of the system. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is going to be A. Coulter, followed by James Greenfield and Wayne Morgan.
So there were three main themes I saw in the letters from the election denial crowd who think this committee is necessary. Theme one is all about minutia, passwords, election equipment, isolation, and such. Details they could have had a meeting with the election division staff on and saved us taxpayers a lot of time and money. Theme two is basically just racism, expressed as usual in the language of limitations. Removing drop boxes, removing early voting, removing mail-in ballots. Paul Ryrich, the co-founder of Heritage Foundation, whose pathetically small voter fraud tally tells us that we're all wasting our time here, said it best in 1980. I don't want everyone to vote. Our leverage in elections quite candidly goes up as the voting populace goes down. Then our current president did him one better when he told an audience, you won't have to vote anymore. Theme three is hand counting, which adds profoundly dumb to mere racism. Here is a partial view of presidents who are elected with no issues with machine counting. This is the guy they started the issue with machine counting on. 3 guesses on the difference between them. Hand counting is slow, expensive, and inaccurate. Tons of research confirm that humans have huge error rates compared to machines who don't get bored. It is so dumb that California has outlawed it except for elections with fewer than 5,000 ballots. We will not let the majority on this board turn it into a rubber stamp for regression of our voting rights. We will be here to call you out every time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is going to be James Greenfield, followed by Wayne Morgan and Lawrence De La Cruz.
Good morning. Thank you, Supervisor Burrell, for being here and for this committee. Thank each of you for stepping up. And there's been some great comments. And so I would echo the great ones. Some of them are. I think it's important that this be about facts. It's not about feelings. It's not about rhetoric or false rhetoric. This all started, and why this is birthed is because there's many that wonder, does our vote really count? And some of you might think that your vote counts, and how much of that's based on, I'm going to say, sincere naivety, or feelings, or support for a register of voters. And it shouldn't be about any of that. It should just be about facts. And you've heard concerns about election observation. I've done some myself and have concerns, and those have been brought up, and they're not answered here at the county by our ROV. So that's a concern. And then you've got county procedures, and then you have hardware issues. And each of you should have received a presentation by Mark Cook that really dives into the hardware. And it should be an apolitical thing. And if you review that, it should give you some questions and concerns at the very least to say, hey, is there any truth to this? And to explore that, and can we explore that as a county? And these are things that the county doesn't even have any control over. It's coming from the state. But if there's a problem, the truth should be sought after and should be pressed and it should be advertised. And so we shouldn't be afraid of the truth. And I hope that this committee will explore that. Also, 2 minutes every 2 months. That's minutia. 3 minutes, please.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker is going to be Wayne Morgan, followed by Lawrence De La Cruz.
Hello, my name is Wayne Morgan. I live in Ventura. Like some previous speakers, I do want to make sure that any recommendation made by this committee is based on facts. And facts, I'd like to see resource references and the actual resources where some of these so-called facts come from. Are they reliable resources? We need to make sure they are. There's so much misinformation and disinformation being spread that we really need to make sure that we have accurate information. Which leads me to the next thing about hand counting. I submitted a comment, written comment, which may not be posted until next time, but it basically has some studies by MIT, Rice University, that basically say hand counting is not reliable. Machine counting is much more reliable. And Arizona's Mojave County found that hand counting would cost their county $521,000. Now their county is much smaller than ours. It's about 1/7. There are 116,000 registered voters. So just multiply 500K by 8 or so, and you get what it might cost us. But more revealing is that they found that it would require 245 people working 19 8-hour day to just count the votes. Now we have 7 times that many. So I don't see how you're going to count votes that quickly. And let's just make sure we have accurate information going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And our last and final speaker is going to be Lawrence De La Cruz.
Thank you. My name is Lawrence De La Cruz. I'm Hispanic. I have identification and I know how to show it. Just in case anybody is concerned about minorities not having ID. We do have ID. We know how to use it and we know how to present it. So that's a little strange of a thing to hear coming from people who are not minorities. The other thing I would like to say is I can verify from my own personal witnessing that there are network cables that go to unknown areas within the computer areas. Dominion voting machines are networked somehow. There are multiple Wi-Fi settings because I also have a cell phone and I know how to look at what type of Wi-Fi there is in the room. And I did sneak a peek and there were multiple signals going on in that room. I was also a personal witness watching the vote count. Multiple times they would run things through a machine. Whether or not they zeroed that machine for the count is questionable. Could not see it. All the voting areas where you can view voting are not clear. You do not have a clear line of sight to what the person operating the Dominion machines are doing, much less be able to see seals, etc. You have to take the word of the ROV that those are done. I've had the ROV lock me out when there was a smoke problem, when I came to witness vote counting. All I heard was laughter when I went to the door. Now, it could have been something else, could have been me knocking at the door. Couldn't tell you for sure. But it makes me very suspicious. The other thing is, if we're going to continue to rely on machines, why do we have a multiple-year contract when it wasn't required, costing billions of dollars? That's just absurd. Why was that done? Never have heard a decent answer for that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. De La Cruz. Chair Gooch, that concludes our public comment for this item. Thank you.
Thank you for the public comments, many of which were duplicated by written comments, but it's special to look somebody in the eyes. So I really do appreciate those who have taken the time, the care,
You're hard to
not only to
hear.
write, but to
Mr. Chair, you're a
Yes.
little hard to hear.
Okay. Well, I'm just thanking those who took the time to do the public comments. The next item, item 9, receive and file a presentation on transparency laws.
Could I suggest, it's just a matter of personal comfort, that we stand up for a minute? Can we all stand up just for a minute?
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes. All right.
Yes.
Great. So when we were putting together the agenda for this first meeting, we had this, also this realization that many of you and many members of the public may have differing experience levels with sitting as a committee member in a public meeting, and really wanting to make sure that you guys had a solid understanding of the ground rules to avoid any accidental missteps with regard to the transparency state laws under the Brown Act and the Public Records Act, because your role as committee members are now subject to those acts. So I have put together some slides that are simply they're just the black letter law on these roles. But I don't freak out to think that I've got to know everything right now. Staff here, as you move forward as a committee, we're going to make sure that the agendas are proper, that we're helping you during the meetings as well. But these are some of the concepts that I want you to be thinking about. Sorry, am I too close?
I'm trying to figure that out. Just keep talking.
Okay, all right. So I put together a presentation. The presentation has been provided to all the committee members. It will be uploaded with the meeting materials that are available after the meeting, as well as all of the public comment letters that have been submitted today. So you can follow along on the slides now, but it will also be uploaded to look at later. So this is one big presentation, but it talks about the next 3 agenda items. So we will take it, and after each agenda item, I will ask if there's any questions. So we'll do the transparency rules first, meeting procedures, and then the election advisory committee scope and authority, which is, I think, what really everybody wants to talk about, but we're gonna build up to that.
I can advance it for you. One more.
All right. So first I'm going to start off with the Brown Act. And I know that many members of the public have been at several Board of Supervisors meetings. I know that many members here on the committee have also been involved in the public meeting process. The first purpose of the Brown Act are the open meeting rules for legislative body meetings. Next slide, Brendan. And Steve, go backward. All right. So the purpose of the Brown Act, Brendan, you just changed it again. So.
Sorry. I don't know what's going on with the technology today.
Okay. So the purpose of the Brown Act is to ensure that almost all aspects of decision-making process of legislative bodies, of local agencies, are conducted in public and open to public scrutiny. So I've got underlined open and public. I always tell when I give trainings to different other advisory bodies throughout the county, as long as you're keeping those 2 concepts in mind when you're moving forward in your activities, you are going to be at least 90% of the time doing the right thing. It does say almost all aspects of decision-making process. There are times where there are closed session discussions for your board or your committee, there will never be a need for you to go into closed session. So all of your discussions have to happen in public. Next slide, please. And the key principles behind that, and I think we've heard it here when everybody talks about elections just in general too, it's the public's business. The public only trusts the process that they can see. And we need to conduct the public's business in open and publicized meetings and allow the public to participate in the meetings. And I'll be honest, public participation is one of my favorite parts of public meetings. Next slide, please. So the Brown Act applies to legislative bodies, and that's set forth in state law. There are several definitions or several concepts that are included in that definition of legislative body. I'm not going to go into all of them for you, but for your purpose, that's the Board of Supervisors, obviously. That's subordinate boards or commissions created by formal action of the Board of Supervisors, like this Election Advisory Committee. And that's also standing committees with regular schedules and continuing subject matter jurisdiction. Your board fits both of those. You are a subordinate committee that's created by formal action of the Board of Supervisors, and you're also a standing committee. You have a discrete subject focus, and you are going to have a regular meeting schedule. So you are subject to the Brown Act and need to conduct your business in open and publicized meetings. Next slide, please. So again, that's just the general rule, and I really like this slide just because I like the graphic of an open with a door. So next slide, please. So that does beg the question of what is a meeting under the Brown Act. And a meeting is very broadly defined, and so that's what you need to keep in mind in your activities. A meeting under the Brown Act is any congregation of a majority of the members at the same time to hear, discuss, deliberate, or take action upon any matter under their jurisdiction. So what you need to realize there, it doesn't say in that definition you all need to be physically in the same place. It doesn't say we need to be meeting at the same time in a building. Anytime there's a majority of your members involved in any type of discussion, it could be on email, phone, or in a physical meeting, could potentially be you're all at a cocktail party and all of a sudden you're all talking about an agenda item. That's going to morph into a meeting. One thing to keep in concept too is that no action needs to take place for a meeting to occur. If you're all just discussing, and even though you don't take a formal vote, that could still potentially be a meeting under the Brown Act. Meetings do include workshops, study sessions, retreats. Sometimes people think, well, we'll call it this. No, that's still going to meet that first bullet point. If there's a congregation of a majority of the members at the same time, and you're hearing, discussing, or deliberating, or taking action on a concept that's under your jurisdiction, that could potentially be a meeting, and it would need to be agendized with the public being able to participate. Next slide, please. So the first thing is what's a majority. The board resolution that created the Election Advisory Committee defined what a majority is. And a quorum is a majority of the members regardless of the number of member vacancies. So you have to have at least a majority of you present, so there always has to be at least 3 of you present to have a meeting. You have to have at least 3 of you affirmatively voting to take action on any item. And this is regardless of the number of vacancies. So if Debbie wins the lottery and she decides to move out of the state and she's no longer going to be in California, and so you only had 4 members, you would still need 3 members to be able to act. Next slide, please. So and I apologize if I'm going fast, there's a lot of slides. So the next thing is when is a meeting not a meeting? Like any good law, there's exceptions to it. So while meeting is broadly defined under state law, under the Brown Act, there are times where we've recognized there are exceptions that are identified when it's not a meeting. One of the first is individual contacts. So you are allowed to talk to each other. You are allowed to receive a briefing from staff member on a thing, an individual contact. But we always have to be careful that that doesn't somehow morph into a serial meeting, and I'll get into that in a minute. Conferences and seminars. You're allowed to attend conferences or conferences open to the public on issues of general interest to the public or public agencies. So like right now, the Disability Summit for the county is going on this week. If you get there and you see 2 of your other committee members there, you don't need to freak out and leave. You're allowed to be there because it is open to the public to attend. Community meetings, you're allowed to attend town meetings or similar gatherings which are open and organized by somebody other than this committee. Purely social or ceremonial occasions. So again, like I said, you are allowed to all attend a cocktail party. You know, if you're all invited and you get there, you don't have to leave because you see your other committee members there. But the thing to keep in mind is that when you're there, you can't talk about committee business. And I also tell them to be careful and remember that appearances matter. I mean, as you've seen, you know, sometimes there's media in the room. And while there are media at different community functions, you're all very active in your communities. So if you are all at a community function and you're all standing in the corner and talking to each other, and you may be talking about the Dodgers game, but the public doesn't know that. The media that's there might not know that, and there might be an assumption that you're talking about the item that's on the agenda next week. So I always tell you, be careful, appearances matter, mingle, make friends, you don't need to talk to each other. So next slide, please. This is another one that I thought would come up that I wanted to highlight. Attendance at meetings of other legislative bodies. A majority of your members are allowed to attend an open meeting of another legislative body. So if for some reason there was some item on the Board of Supervisors agenda and a majority of you happen to be there or happen to go, that is fine. But again, you can't discuss among yourselves your topics. And next slide, please. One of the things that comes up that is often an inadvertent area of challenge and potential problems under the Brown Act are serial meetings. And serial meetings are expressly prohibited and illegal. And a serial meeting is a series of communications, direct or indirect, each which involves less than a quorum, but when you take it and put it all together, you've now got a majority discussing an item. And it can happen a multitude of ways. It can happen through phone calls, it can happen through letters, it can happen through emails, it can happen through a mix of those. And those are all expressly prohibited under the law. And the reasoning is that deliberations and actions of public bodies need to be done openly. So again, we're thinking of that open and public. Next slide, please. Come up are the hub and spoke. So you'll have committee member A talks to committee member B because you guys want to see what do you think about this item, and then A talks to committee member C, but B doesn't know that A and C talked. So you now have three that are there. So it's been this spoke. That can also happen sometimes through staff members. If staff members are sharing information what A, B, and C all said. So while individual briefings from staff are fine, you shouldn't be asking what your colleagues did or trying to figure out how others are approaching an item. The other way that serial meetings happen are telephone and email chains. A calls B, B calls, then B calls C, or one email and the next email. And so those are always the kind of things to take in mind. So I would just always caution that when acting as a committee member, really limiting any discussions you have with your colleagues to the public meetings themselves. Sometimes there may be an item or something that you have an issue that you feel passionately about or you want to talk to a colleague about, and I always use the term, you can have a Brown Act buddy. You can have one. So you can have one Brown Act buddy on a particular subject or a particular item. If that person doesn't want to be your buddy, you are now done. You can't ask somebody else to be your buddy on that item. So, the prohibited, again, this is just more about emails. Email is a technological device under the Brown Act. And so when looking at this and evaluating whether or not that email is somehow a serial meeting, it's, the standard is the email about a discussion or action item to be taken by the legislative body? And can the email be construed by the public that way? Because you'll often find out too, that email is going to be a public record, and if somebody requested it, would be released. And an email violates the Brown Act when it's used by a majority of the legislative body to discuss, deliberate, or take action on an item. So if there's going to be a situation where, I will use an example from a prior jurisdiction that I worked at. There was an email that was sent to a colleague, and it was like, how do you think the others are voting on this? That email on its own is not a violation of the Brown Act. But when you start, if there's an answer to it and there's further discussion about that, then you are getting into that potential serial meeting situation. So I always tell people, beware of potential serial, beware of the reply all. Really, don't send an email unless it's absolutely necessary. And if it's an email that you're really wanting to talk about things, that should be a discussion happening in your meeting. Next slide, please. Refrain from replying to email directed to majority of the members. Do not take a position or make a commitment on public matters yet to be decided. Here's the biggest one. Emails can be forwarded without your knowledge. I think we've all had that situation where you've emailed one person and then maybe even months later, your email, you get it back and you're at the bottom of this chain and there's been this full discussion that's happened that you didn't even know about because your email was forwarded. Like I said, emails and text messages addressing Election Advisory Committee issues are public records and if requested would probably need to be disclosed. And this applies even if they're sent on your own personal email accounts and personal devices. So as advisory bodies, you don't have a county issued email, we don't have you in the system, it would be your own emails. So if Public Records Act requests come in, your emails, you have to search your own emails. Next slide, please. This is a new law that came into effect a few years ago, and I wanted to just bring it to your attention about social media. So while the Brown Act usually applies, you have to think that majority concept. It's always like, okay, I can have a Brown Act buddy, I can't have, can't be 3 involved, but 2 people can be involved in a discussion. There was a change in the law with regard to social media. And a public official may use social media platforms to answer questions, provide information to the public, or to solicit information from the public regarding a matter under their jurisdiction. So, as committee members, you're active in your committee. I don't know if any of you have social media, but if you were using your social media as a platform, you do then also have to get concerned about having that morph into being a public official, and you're lacking an ability to remove anybody or block anybody. So like, I have social media and it's my cat videos and food travel, and I don't use it for any public purpose. It's my private. But if you are having, you have an account and you want to share your agenda or put that information out there, you can do that. But you need to make sure that you don't, as a group, talk amongst yourselves on each other's social media. Discuss amongst yourselves include making posts, commenting, even using emojis like a like or a smiley or on it. And while normally a single contact between one public official and another would not normally constitute a serial meeting, next slide please. Under this law, a single contact is enough to trigger a violation of the law. So if you've posted something on, or you see that one of your fellow committee members has posted the upcoming agenda on their social media page, or maybe they did a TikTok dance to it and they have it on TikTok, if you comment on that or you like it, it does run afoul of this law. So it really, to me, it's a kind of a harsh stance point that you couldn't even just acknowledge that they did it. So I would just caution you when you're using social media if you're going to be using it for your committee platform. Next slide, please. So under the Brown Act too, there's a requirement. Obviously, it's not. We have to have our meetings open in public. It's not just enough to say, "Hey, we're having a meeting," and open the doors. We have to have an agenda. The public needs to know what we're going to be discussing. So this slide here is just focused on regular meetings because that's what you will be having is regular meetings. For every regular meeting, we must post the agenda 72 hours prior to the meeting. And it has to be physically posted in an area that's freely accessible to the public 24 hours a day and on a website. So we do both that here. They're posted on the website and they're also posted downstairs outside in the glass case. So if anybody wanted to come up here at 2 a.m., they could go and look to see that the agenda is there. Security might stop you, but you could do it. You have to include the time and location of the meeting on the agenda. That makes sense. And the agenda has to include a brief general description of each item to be discussed or addressed, including closed session items. We don't have closed session items. We will have to include it has to be publicly accessible and distributed in advance to those that request copies, including any alternative formats such as under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So the good news here is that county staff, Mia and Brendan, they're excellent. They handle the agendas. You don't need to worry about the content of the agenda. But I wanted you to be aware of the rules. The only other difference, so this is the only slide I really prepared about agendas. The other special meetings, the agenda has to go out 24 hours in advance. Special meetings are typically meetings that are just not held at your regular time. Next slide, please. All right, public participation. Under the Brown Act, it's really only going to work as open and public if the public has the right to participate. So the public has the right to comment. At every regular meeting, members of the public have the right to directly address the body on any item of public interest, if that item is under the jurisdiction of the body. So we just had that with agenda item 8. The members of the public have the ability to comment on anything that's not listed on the agenda. And the law does say it's under the jurisdiction of the body. Your body is tasked with elections, so all comments should be geared toward that. But if somebody were here to comment and it was vaguely about elections, but they're going a little bit off, or maybe they're coming to comment because they're frustrated with something that the Planning Commission did, that's really not your jurisdiction. Oftentimes, though, it's not worth the back and forth on it and just letting the people speak. For agenda items, though, the public must be given the opportunity to comment before or during the board's consideration of the item. So when we have an item that's listed, that's specifically listed, a subject that's listed on your agenda, the public should be commenting at that time before you take a vote, which makes sense. We don't want to put it at the very end and you've already acted, they don't get a meaningful opportunity to comment. Next slide, please. So with regard to public participation, like I said, the public can speak on any item in the subject matter jurisdiction. They can criticize policies, procedures, programs, services, omissions. They can criticize the work of this body. They can criticize the work of the Board of Supervisors. They can criticize staff, unfortunately. They're doing their job, but they're doing a fabulous job. Part of being a committee member and volunteering your time is accepting grandstanding, negative feedback, and criticism. It's all part of public service. We really do try and keep rules of decorum and civility so that it isn't just a toxic situation, I think. The public is not required to register. Speaker cards are not a prerequisite, so we do have speaker cards and we ask people to fill them out and we ask people to register their name because it helps us keep an orderly record of what occurred. But if a member of the public did not want to give their name, they would not be required to do so and they would still get the opportunity to speak. If they did not want to fill out a speaker card, they would still get the opportunity to speak. Your body is able to impose time limits and prohibit disruptive conduct because we do want to have an orderly meeting. So any conduct that disrupts or impedes the meeting, we can address that. We have rules of decorum and reasonable restrictions on public comment are permitted if they're not too broad and they don't constitute prior restraints. Obviously, we don't want to try and say what people can or can't speak about. Recording is permitted, as we've seen. The public is allowed to record the meeting, but they have to be able to do it in a way that doesn't impact safety or impede the conduct of the meeting. So with the camera that's here in place, it's set to the side. It's not blocking any access. If somebody wanted to come into the meeting and record the meeting, but they wanted cameras just directly in front of all of your faces, that's disruptive. We can put a reasonable restriction on that. If the body reviews documents, copies of those documents must be publicly available and provided without delay when requested. So this presentation, it will be online for the public after this meeting. Next slide, please. So while the public can talk about anything they want that's within the subject matter jurisdiction, as committee members, you're limited. You can only discuss items and take action on items that are public on the agenda. There are some exceptions to that. You are allowed to give a brief response to a statement or a question to the public. You are allowed to ask questions of staff for clarification on matters based on public comment. You're allowed to make a brief announcement or report on your own activities. You can ask staff to report back on a future meeting on any matter. And you can ask that items be added to a future agenda for substantive discussion. And we have that of board member comments and possible future items listed on your agenda. So one of the things to remember here is that all of this when looked at by courts, it's very brief. So while you can ask staff for clarifications or ask a question based on public comment, you'll notice if it starts to get a little back and forth, I'm going to get here and get a little antsy and shut down the conversation because it has to be brief. And I often think too that if you are reaching a situation where where your committee members are wanting to talk about that public comment more, or you're interested in that topic that's been raised by the public comment, there are probably others that may feel that way. There may be more additional public comment on it. You may want to have more discussion, and it's going to be more appropriate for a future agenda item where you can have a full dialogue.
Question about that last bullet point. So for instance, the public comments we received today, all comments related to nothing on the agenda, or nothing for action by the
Correct, yeah, it wasn't a listed agenda item.
In that instance, when would it be appropriate, let's say if they're making claims about deficiencies, or they feel there's something that needs to be done to improve the election process, or let's say they're, like one speaker I recall stating that they submitted recommendations or issues that they did not receive response on, and how would we go about asking for a report to be done on something like that in a future agenda item?
So, as I said, on your agenda, it's agenda item 13, lucky number 13. There's a time for committee member comments and discussion of potential future agenda items. So that would be a time for one of you, or for you to bring that up to say this is something that I'd like to see on a future agenda. Now I'll get into it, and when we talk about agenda item 11, the scope of your agendas. Your agendas, while we do ask for feedback from the committee members on items that you're wanting to hear based on public forum, the point of this committee is to be a resource. Your agendas are still vetted through the vice chair as the liaison for the committee. So there might not be things that may not, while you might want it as a future agenda item, it might not rise to the level of actually being put on the agenda in the future.
Understood.
All right, next slide, please. Meeting location, this makes sense. General rule, you have to hold your meetings within the jurisdiction of the body. There are some exceptions. I don't see where they would come up here, but I wanted to make you aware. So it has to be that we have to have it in a physical location that we've listed on the agenda. The public has to be able to attend free of charge. But you can, if there was some need to inspect real property, we could do a meeting there. If the court was telling us we had to have the meeting somewhere else, I'm going to tell you we have to have the meeting somewhere else. And then participation in meetings with multi-agencies after proper notice is given. Next slide, please. The consequences. So there are consequences for violating the Brown Act, and it's not just me being sad. The first is that there can be a civil suit to have the action declared null and void. So if somebody believes that this committee violated the Brown Act in some way by potentially taking action on an item that wasn't listed on the agenda, we'd have to, before they could run to court to file that suit to have that action overturned, they'd need to give us the chance to cure and correct the violation. Repeated violations could be an injunction prohibiting future violations. One thing to remember, a civil violation does not require that you actually vote or take action on an item. So if somebody thought potentially that this committee had a long-winded discussion on an item that wasn't listed on the agenda, and you didn't actually take a vote on that item, but there was a long-winded discussion, maybe it was something with public comment and it got unwieldy and you didn't listen to my advice to move on. Somebody could potentially try and say that you violated the Brown Act. What they'd have to first do is submit a letter or submit some type of notice and give us the opportunity to fix that. And that could be just as simple as putting that topic on the agenda to have a full party discussion about it afterward. One of the things with the Brown Act, for civil violations, court fees and attorney's fees and costs are recoverable. So while they seek to have an action declared null and void, they're also going to recover their attorney's fees and court costs. There's also media scrutiny. with Brown Act violations. So I'd like to just avoid that. The other thing, there are criminal violations and consequences. And I've been giving Brown Act trainings for many years now, and at one point I looked it up, and there hadn't been any criminal convictions for Brown Act violations since the law had been enacted in 1954. That may have changed. I have not looked at this since then. But for a criminal violation, a member would have to take action intending to deprive the public of information to which the public is entitled. So you would really have to be devious and just really wanting to act with an intent to keep the public out of the process. I don't believe anybody that serves in public service thinks that way or would want to approach it that way, certainly not volunteers on our advisory committees. Guilty, and if you were found that, would be guilty of a misdemeanor, and the criminal sanctions are up to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine. Next slide. So that's the Brown Act in, I don't know, 15 minutes or so. I don't know if you have any questions. The real points I wanted to hit with you there was that your conduct outside of committee meetings, really being cautious on your communications with your colleagues, and just recognizing that you are held to the standard that the meetings have to be in an open forum.
So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned that people do not have to submit a card to have a public comment. Should we, at the end of the people who have submitted the card, then say, is there anyone else here who would like to make a public comment for those people who did not submit a card?
We could do that. So this is the presentations to them. I'm not taking questions right now. We'll take it at the end of the agenda. Did you? Okay. All right, next slide. All right, the next I just want to go briefly over the Public Records Act, and there were two reasons I wanted to highlight this for you. The Public Records Act governs the public's access to government records. It is codified in the California Constitution as well, and it's set forth in the Government Code 7920. Next slide, please. That I was going to cover more than that. So I would say, keep in mind the golden rule. All local agency records must be disclosed to the public upon request unless those records are specifically made exempt. So the practice point for you here is you need to assume that most of your emails with county staff or board members and messages and all of your external emails and messages regarding election advisory committee activities are public records that will be released upon inquiry. There are going to be very few exceptions that are going to apply to protect your communications. So if you have members of the public that are emailing you about EAC activities, those are going to be public records. If staff is sending you the agenda materials or responding to a question, those are going to be public records. Next slide, please. A public record means any writing containing information relating to the conduct of the public's business, prepared, owned, used, or retained by any state or local agency, regardless of any physical form or characteristics. Next slide, please. So writing can mean any handwriting, typewriting, printing, photocopying, photography, email, fax. I don't know if anybody sends a fax anymore. Or any other means of recording upon a tangible thing or any form of communication. So the biggest thing I always think for you to keep in mind, it's emails and text messages. Those are most often what come up. But if you took handwritten notes, if you had a handwritten note, that's potentially would have to be released. Next slide, please. See, I'm jumping ahead. Handwritten notes, computer printouts, photographs. Again, I need to update some of this. Who has compact discs? Audio and video recording, so if you have made a recording of something, you could potentially have to be released. And then the highlight here for you, including on personal accounts and devices. Next slide. So under the Public Records Act, the public gets to make a request, and sometimes they're very clear and very straightforward, and I'm very excited because I'm like, yes, you can easily answer this one. Other times, they may be very long, they may have lots of and this and that, and we really need to figure out what they're asking for, how to clarify the request. are these documents that the county even possesses? But we have a short time frame under state law. So within 10 days of receipt of the request, the county has to determine whether the request seeks copies of disclosable records. And then we have to provide a written response to the person or entity making the request. We don't have to provide the records within 10 days. We have a reasonable time after that. We have to state the estimated date when responsive or non-exempt records may be available. If a request comes in for your records, staff will ask you to compile the records from your own personal devices. I'm not going to ask you to turn over your phone to me. I'm going to ask you, and we're going to rely on you to give us the records that are responsive to that request. And then we will then review the records for any possible exemptions that may apply. So next slide, please. One thing to keep in mind that public records must contain information about the public's business. So in looking at a record, so say like we get a Public Records Act request and you've been very awesome and you've given me the records that are responsive. I then go through this process. We determine if the record relates to the public business. I examine the content of the record, the context or purpose for which it was written. Who was it written to? Whether it was prepared by an employee acting within the scope of their employment or whether it was prepared by a committee member acting within the scope of your committee. Messages that are purely personal but contain incidental mentions of county business are not public records. So if I was emailing my mom and I'm just venting about, you know, my brother, let's put it in a real context, and I'm just venting about my brother, but I have a throwaway line in there where I say, and I gotta go to the board meeting tomorrow and it's gonna be long. That's incidental. That's not the conduct of the county's business. Now, if I was sending an email to my mom and I am talking about the agenda items and like, oh, this one's gonna take a long time, or, you know, this is a complicated matter, if somebody asked for it, I'd have to turn that over because it is the conduct of the business given my role. So, next slide, please. And so I will say, yeah, venting frustration, most of the time that might not be a public record because it's an incidental reference. But if you're getting just the substance of your activities, that would be a public record. So withholding records, not everything is accessible. The Public Records Act does recognize that there are certain types of records that don't have to be released. However, in order to rely on an exception, it must be expressly set forth in the Public Records Act, or it's imported into the Public Records Act by another provision of state law. And all exemptions are narrowly construed by the court. One of the biggest ones that comes up is the public interest balancing test. That's kind of like the catch-all exemption. And the county has to demonstrate the interest served by not disclosing the record clearly outweighs the public interest served by disclosing the record, and we bear the burden of proof. Next slide, please. And with regarding to exemptions, we have to specifically identify them in writing. So if we are relying on an exemption to not release records, we've got to tell the public or tell the requester why and what exemptions we're relying on. Some records may be entirely exempt, like an attorney-client communication. That's not going to get released. So my emails to the Board of Supervisors or my emails to you where I'm giving legal advice, it's not going to be released. And you can't release it to anybody either. If a portion of a record is exempt, we have to redact the record and release the part that can be released. But the county has no duty to curate a log of records that are withheld. So if we are relying on an exemption to not release a record, we don't have to say what records we're not releasing. Next slide. So I wanted to get into some of the exemptions. And the reason I wanted to spend some time with that, like I said, staff usually we rely on you to compile your records and then we would be reviewing them when a request comes in for your records. But under the resolution that created your body, you're entitled to records that are public records in your role. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the exemptions that are in place that may not give you access to particular records. Next slide. So exemptions, one of the exemptions that often comes up, exemptions are not absolute. There's usually a balancing type test involved, but drafts. So the exemption applies to preliminary drafts, notes, and interagency or intra-agency memoranda that are not retained by a public agency in the ordinary course of business if the public interest in withholding those records clearly outweigh the public interest in disclosure. So if you were wanting to see a particular department's records on something in your committee activities, we are not required to produce drafts if the public interest in if the draft's not retained in the ordinary course of business, and if the public interest in withholding that record clearly outweighs the public interest in disclosure. And a lot of times it's because draft is clearly still in that thought process. You know, it's in that phrase I hate. It's still in the sausage making, process. So, next slide, please. Pending litigation. Records that are prepared in connection with litigation cannot be released. That exemption lasts only until the litigation is finally adjudicated or otherwise settled. But even then, some other exemptions may still apply, like attorney-client communications, confidential settlement discussions. Once a settlement is finalized, a settlement document is disclosable. Same with any deposition transcripts after a case is over. Next slide. Investigatory records. Investigations that are done for any law enforcement, licensing, or correctional purposes are confidential, and they're not, you cannot get access to them. Next slide. This is the privileged information. The Public Records Act specifically exempts from disclosure records, the disclosure of which is exempted from state federal law. This often comes up with regard to evidence code and privilege, so that's where attorney-client, attorney-work product, some of the patient records, physician, doctor, patient records, those kinds of things. I don't know that that's really going to come up here with regard to your body, other than I would think in the attorney-client, attorney-work product situation. Next slide. There, Betsy. But for you to know, this is important. The attorney-client privilege is imported into the California Public Records Act under the Evidence Code. It applies to litigation, legal advice in litigation and non-litigation contexts. You know, any legal advice that my office is giving to a department on their roles or their duties is going to be protected. Any communications that my office has with a department on an actual lawsuit, that's also privileged. So, like I said earlier, you know, there may be times where I might be emailing you, and and my email would be confidential. It would be an attorney-client communication. One thing to keep in mind. Merely copying me on an email does not make it attorney-client privileged if I'm not being asked in some way to provide any legal input on it. So, there has been, in my prior world, sometimes we think, well, we'll just copy county counsel and make it protected. Well, if I'm not involved, and if you're not asking for any type of legal input and it's not a legal issue, that's not going to be enough to protect it. So, next slide. Attorney work product, that's also protected. Next slide. Deliberative process. So the deliberative process exemption is intended to address concerns that frank discussion of legal or policy matters might be chilled if it's subject to public scrutiny. So it protects public officials' thought processes. And so it's often, this privilege comes up when you're looking at pre-decisional communications or records. So if thinking what context I usually use is, say, if a Board of Supervisors member was emailing with their staff on or even potentially emailing the CEO on a policy item, what they're thinking about, a policy decision, a policy matter that they're thinking of bringing forward to the board, that's still pre-decisional communications, so that may be protected and would be exempt from disclosure, because it's to release that would inhibit a frank and candid discussion, and we want our local governments to have the ability to have candid discussions. This is a balancing test; it's not absolute. So it's the same with you and your colleagues. So if two of you were talking about a pre-decisional item, or you were thinking about bringing something forward to your board together, or a future agenda item you're talking about, potentially that would be considered under deliberative process and wouldn't be released. but it may be released. The interest, it always comes back to that balancing test of whether the disclosure would expose the agency's decision-making process in such a way to discourage candid discussion among the agency. Because the thought is, we want you to be able to have frank and candid discussions, and if you didn't, then that's, potentially the thought is processes and bad decisions get made because you weren't fully vetting things. Next slide, please. Some of the other just general exemptions that come up, personnel files, medical information, that type of similar information that impacts somebody's privacy right, real estate appraisals, engineering studies, taxpayer information gathered in connection with local taxes, library circulation records. Good news, nobody knows what you check out from the library. The librarian knows, but the public can't ask for it. Voter registration information, it's expressly exempt. Initiative, recall, and referendum petitions, those are all expressly exempt under state law. And then the confidential records of applicants or recipients of public social services. Next slide, please. So that's the Public Records Act in a really quick and dirty nutshell. I could spend hours talking about it. I'm fun at parties that way. So again, I wanted to highlight that for you, your records are subject to disclosure, so to keep that in mind when you're emailing, keep that in mind when you're texting, that comes up, and then also kind of set a framework of when you are doing your work as a committee and the records that you're asking for yourselves. So with that, are there any questions?
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. I'm not really sure if this question belongs here, but what about our communications with the supervisor that appointed us and also with Supervisor Gorell as our liaison? What are the restrictions or limitations there?
You need to assume that those are going to be public records that would be released.
Okay. And with regard to Brown Act violations, is there anything that we need to know about?
Not with the supervisors. The Brown Act is always going to come in with you and your committee members.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I would just would like to remind our audience today that if you would like to submit public comment on one of these future items, please fill out a green card and then just bring it up to the clerk and we'll add you to the queue. As a member of the public, you're able to address the committee with a public comment, but not engage in any sort of conversation with staff or with the public. Thank you.
One little quick question. Before we convened this committee, I got a fair number of emails from people suggesting do this, do that, or think about this, or thank you for being a part of it. Are those things that, if you asked me for my emails, would you want me to go back to everything that I got that had anything that mentioned EAC?
It would depend on what the request was.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of times with request, is it a date range we're having to look for? It really, like I said, it does come down to what each request comes in, and every time there's a Public Record Act request that comes into the county, and the county gets thousands of requests a year for all the county departments. We, county staff at each department that's tasked, they look at each one and determine, is the request focused and specific? Is it clear what it's asking for? And then the county has a duty to assist the requester if the request isn't clear. So oftentimes there are date ranges that they're looking for.
But is the point that we should save those so
Yes.
that if at a future point something came up?
That's a very good point, yes. Anything now that you're receiving that is election advisory committee related, you should be saving those records because it is now part of the county's business. So I recommend setting up a folder in your email system or something and just putting them all in there. Are there any requests to speak on this item?
Thank you. We did not receive any requests to speak for this item.
So,
I have one question to me. If we don't have the presence of mind to think of things we would like to have a committee consider for future meetings, can we send those to you at a later point in time?
Yes, you're able to send any public comment that you want to clerk of the board at venturacounty.gov. And if it's a correspondence for an agenda item, we will forward that on to the committee.
You forwarded. I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Yes, it gets forwarded.
It gets forwarded to.
To the committee.
The committee.
To the committee, okay. I didn't hear the last part.
Are you,
Just one clarification on some comments that you put up there.
okay.
You made the comment that as public comments, we don't need to register and somehow we can get public comments. I was in a meeting last year, about August of last year, where we did that. We asked for, we weren't on the record, there were tons of people, and one of our members held up their hand and says, I would like to talk. That individual was denied the right to talk. What are the rules of engagement here on how, if you don't have to register and it's sitting in the back and you want to talk, how do you do it? Like just now. I raised my hand and I said I wanted to talk.
Excuse me, counsel, I think Committee Member Patterson's question earlier about how we take public comment when people don't submit a speaker card is simply to ask, is there anyone else who would like to make a public comment? So we've already talked about that.
Well, it wasn't clear that your response was accepted, and that is really the rules that you guys are imposing.
That's what's being done here.
So in this committee, I can expect that at the end of every meeting, someone in your group is going to say, is there any additional comments? And if I haven't submitted a card, I can raise my hand and I get to speak? Is that correct?
I would imagine at the appropriate agenda item.
So we would, like we said, we still have a general public comment listed on the agenda. So if you're wanting to speak on something that's not listed on the agenda, but you're not wanting to put a speaker card in, the chair will be asking, or the clerk of the board will be asking, is there anybody else that wishes to speak on this item? All right.
So just a point of clarification. When you ask, are there any questions, you're only speaking to the EAC?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes. The public gets to provide comment, but I'm answering questions of the EAC.
I didn't hear the question.
Whether or not I would be answering questions from staff.
Okay.
Or from the public. Thank you.
Let me clarify the timing. The question seemed to be not at the end of the public comments, could someone who hadn't submitted something simply verbally ask, but it was very generally phrased so that it almost sounded as though at the end of the committee meetings, literally after everything was done and we're about to close, could someone request to speak? I think that's what she was after.
Can I say?
I don't want to get into a big long-winded about this, but yes, you can.
This particular situation was at the end of public comments.
But it wasn't this meeting.
And it was part of Agenda 8. And the individual, there were like 40 speakers, and another person wanted to speak, and the individual running the meeting said, can't speak, closed.
That can happen. I
just want to make sure we understand what the rules are.
So for here, what we've discussed now is that there are, as I just said in the presentation, there's general public comment where the public can provide input on anything, any comments on any item not listed on the agenda, and then you can provide comments on each agenda item. People are not required to put a speaker card in, but it does help to have a regular, have an orderly meeting when people put them in. If you aren't putting a speaker card in, the chair or the clerk of the board will be asking at the end of the agenda item if there's anybody else that wishes to speak. Does that get it? So this is listed as a receive and file for agenda item 9. So it's receive and file the presentation on the transparency laws regarding the Brown Act and the Public Records Act. So I
need a motion. I move the recommended action.
Second. I'll let the clerk of the board do that.
Apologize, my friend isn't
That was moved by Committee Member Frank.
Second by Patterson.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Chair, we're ready to move on to item 10, if you'd like to call that item.
So this is to receive and file a presentation on meeting procedures.
Yes.
Just
Yeah, and I will try and go quickly through this one to get to the meat of the next item. So next slide, please, Brendan. The meeting procedures, this is just really to help make sure that we've got run an orderly meeting with a clear record for both the public and staff and your committee. So first, as we talked about earlier, a quorum is the majority of the members of the EAC, 3 out of 5, regardless of the vacant positions. Any action requires an affirmative vote of at least 3 of your members. Next slide. So running a meeting, parliamentary procedure. EAC members should use parliamentary procedures as guidelines when conducting your public meeting. Per the Board of Supervisors resolution, we are using Rosenberg's Rules of Order. We often hear, well, we use Robert's Rules of Order, and I don't know if anybody's ever looked at Robert's Rules of Order. It's like 400 pages long, and it's so in-depth. Rosenberg's Rules of Order is much more simplified, and when it gets down to it, in my work of public service, most bodies use a form of Rosenberg's Rules of Order. It allows everyone to be heard, allows discussions to be made without confusion.
I'm not sure what changed and why that's happening. Just
And it's an orderly meeting with a clear record. That's always my goal. Next slide, please. So we have to have meetings conducted in accordance with the agenda, prepared for the meeting, and typically it's going to be in the order listed in the agenda. Now, agendas do have, like our agenda, talked about public comment could be taken at the end of the meeting. Board of Supervisors agendas do have notations listed on the agenda that items can be taken at different times. So when something, typically we go in the order of the agenda, but the agenda does give the flexibility. Next slide. Motions. You guys have been doing a fantastic job with this already. In order for the EAC to approve, deny, or take action on any item, a motion must be made by an EAC member. Example, I move to approve sending a written report on election feedback to the Board of Supervisors. I second the motion. If the motion is made and not seconded, it cannot be voted on by the EAC. Next slide, please. Once a motion is made and seconded by the chair, the motion gets announced. That can happen by the chair, or it can happen by a clerk of the board staff doing the amazing job that they do. Then we can ask for any more discussion on the motion. Sometimes the discussion happens before the motion's made, so there isn't really a whole lot of need for a discussion afterward. Other times it happens after the motion's made. Either way is fine. Once a motion is made and seconded and there's been discussion, there's a call for the vote, and then the EAC votes, and then we state the results of the vote. The motion passes with who voted in favor and who voted against. Again, we need at least 3 affirmative votes for any item to pass. Next slide. There are 3 types of motions that are recognized in Rosenberg's Rules of Order. The main motion, that's the motion before you, is currently phrased. A motion to amend is a motion to change the pending motion in some way, but still keep the general concept of that pending motion. And that can happen 2 ways. I think oftentimes, like you'll see, for those of you that look at watch Board of Supervisors meetings, oftentimes it'll be a friendly amendment where one of the board members made a motion and another board member seeks to maybe clarify that or expand it a little bit, and they'll offer that as a friendly amendment, and then that first motion maker says, yes, that's included in my motion. Other times it can be a more formal motion to amend where they're essentially taking it away, and this is now going to be the new motion. I most often see it happen as a friendly amendment situation. The other type of motion that happens is a substitute motion, which is a motion to completely do away with the pending motion and go in another direction and put forward a new motion. Formal motions to amend and substitute motions are alternative motions to the main motion. And I know that there's a whole lot of motion happening. If seconded, it is voted on before the main motion. So if somebody were to put forward, say, I make a motion to submit the report to the Board of Supervisors, and that motion, somebody then makes a substitute, not motion seconded, but somebody makes a substitute motion during discussion. And that motion is, I recommend that we take this report back to the drawing board and we revisit these things. That's a substitute motion because it's a totally different concept than what's been put forward. If that substitute motion is seconded, that substitute motion has to be voted on first. And so if the substitute motion passes, meaning in this situation that we're going to take that report back to the drawing board, that first motion fails because your committee took action. Now, if that substitute motion doesn't pass, we then go back to the main motion. And a formal motion to amend happens in the same process. Next slide. See, that was it in Rosenberg's Rules of Order, and staff is here, we're here to help guide you through that process. Orderly meeting practices. During discussion of agenda items, you should avoid interrupting each other and should allow for each other to have a turn to speak. That's especially important so the clerk of the board, as they're keeping track of things for the minutes, that we have a clear record. Any questions or requests to speak by EAC members should be made to the chair. The chair then will be able to see when EAC members may speak or have the floor. As you see, that's also a bit more casual sometimes it's more formal, but that is the process. The chair enforces order and decorum among EAC members and public and others in attendance. I will say I know that sometimes I'm looked to help guide and keep things in line. Clerk of the board is too, but ultimately the chair has the power. Next slide. So we do have, the Board of Supervisors has adopted a code of conduct for all boards and commissions. And they do require adherence to the following principles. And all this does come back to, really honestly, to me, when you read it all, is respect and good governance. We need to promote decisions that serve the public interest and promote the greatest public good. Actively promote public confidence in county government through your actions. Recognize and support the public's right to know the public's business. That's why we conduct our meetings in an open and transparent manner. Allow citizens in the decision-making process and welcome divergent viewpoints. That includes divergent viewpoints from members of the public and divergent viewpoints of your colleagues. But we always do that in a respectful way. Respond to the public in ways that are complete, clear, and easy to understand. That is in the code of conduct, but we also have to keep in mind the limitations we have in responding to public comment under the Brown Act. Next slide. Maintain a respectful attitude toward the public, employees, other public officials, and colleagues. Respect and protect privileged confidential information. So in your role as advisory committee members, there may be times where you're going to have access to privileged or confidential information. In doing so, we ask that you respect that information and that you not distribute it. Be a good listener, carefully considering all opinions and points of view. Be informed on the background of issues before your commission or board, and then comply with all laws, ordinances, policies, and regulations. So like I said, these are applicable to all committee members, commission members, and advisory bodies, and the Board of Supervisors operates from these same standards. Next slide. You need to work in partnership with governmental agencies, political subdivisions, and organizations to further the interests of the county. However, I need to point out, you cannot hold yourself out as representing the county to any other body. So if you were to go to a city council meeting and want to speak on an issue that's important to you, you cannot say that you're representing the county in that role, unless you're specifically authorized to say, I'm on the election advisory committee representing the county on this issue. Your reference to your appointed position can only be used when attending official meetings or functions, and cannot be used to promote or advance your own individual interests or political interests. Next slide. You should avoid outside interests that interfere or conflict with maintaining an objective and impartial perspective. You should guard against conflicts of interest. As an advisory body, I don't know that this is going to come up with regard to any type of full political Reform Act type of conflicts. But you should, in rendering your advice, we always do want to protect the integrity of the actions that are being made by this body. So, keeping in mind, any outside influences that you're being subjected to. Accepting gifts, services, or any objects of value for any influence on a decision is prohibited. That's the same. Efforts to influence or attempt to influence other officials, you should not do that. You should identify the recommendations or decisions, this is in the policy, to identify the best service, product, or alternative at minimal cost without sacrificing quality or fiscal responsibilities. In your advisory role, the cost is not really coming up, but it is something to be mindful of. Next slide. I need my glasses on now. So the rules of decorum. I've already appreciated, we saw some great with the public already. We do have rules of decorum. These are the same rules of decorum as the Board of Supervisors. I took all of this from there and setting it up. One, all personal communication devices should be turned off, put in a non-audible mode. The ringer hasn't been on my phone in probably a decade. Signs or posters should not be brought into the meeting room if it would the presence disturbs, disrupts, or impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting. We don't have any posters in here today, and I included these things and wanted to highlight for your board and for the members of the public that are attending, because we've seen over the past year, election issues are a very spirited issue here in the county, with discussion on both sides and a lot of strong passion on both, on any side of the issue. So sometimes that people bring in signs, sometimes people have large signs, sometimes they're smaller signs. They are, we've seen in the Board of Supervisors meetings, sometimes there's clapping, sometimes there's booing. And we really want to make sure that, just like in the Board of Supervisors meetings, that in this meeting, that we are providing a safe space for all opinions to be heard, so that nobody's voice is drowning out somebody else's because they're booing while somebody else is trying to speak. So the rules of decorum, thumbs up, thumbs down, members of the public can show how they're feeling, and you can see that without impacting the voice that is speaking at that point. Speakers and commission and audience members are prohibited from using profane or vulgar language, making true threats of physical violence. Thankfully, this has never been anything that's come up as an issue, but it is in there. Again, then this is the not making any audible displays. Next slide, please. So that's all I had on the rules of decorum and code of conduct and parliamentary procedure. So your committee has any questions? Entertain a motion for that.
One second.
Does Committee Member Espinoisa the second?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Motion to receive and file, made by Committee Member Frank, second by Committee Member Espinoisa. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
I don't know if you need to stand up and shake it out.
Chair, I just wanted to just remind you that we did not have any public for this comment, and if there's anybody in the audience who would like to give public comment on this item, now is the time to raise your hand and proceed to the podium. Thank you.
For item 10.
For item 10, yes.
Excuse me, Chair, are we going to be taking any kind of a break anytime soon?
Scheduled to at least get up and stretch.
We are at your pleasure.
Yeah. Come get up. Just take a
5 minutes.
Stand up, stretch.
5 minute break.
Thank you.
Could sit and we'll resume. Go. Back to the marathon.
I know. Thank you so much for listening to me continue to talk. Thankfully, this is the last item that I have to talk about. I did, in setting this up and recognizing this is your first meeting, and that we're still learning how this committee is going to unfold and what your priorities are and how to moving forward. I did want to set the framework for you, again, including the transparency laws, the rules of conduct, really what your scope is. I don't know if the members of the public or any committee members have gotten to memorize the resolution that created the board like I did, but I wanted to spend some time on that with you. So next slide, please. So just to go over the overall authority and scope, this is an advisory body that's been created under state law, under the government code, and it says that the Board of Supervisors may appoint commissions or committees of citizens to study problems of general or special interest to the board and to make reports and recommendations to the board. That's your task. You are an advisory body to the Board of Supervisors. Next slide. You are created by resolution. The benefits that was resolution 25032 that was adopted by the board, I believe it was adopted in April. The benefits that are listed in the resolution of this body is to encourage public participation by providing a structured platform for residents to express their concerns and suggest improvements in the election process, strengthening public confidence by ensuring open discussions on election processes. I feel like I'm too close, but then I feel like you can't hear me if I'm not close enough. Providing election officials with valuable community feedback and insight, like we've talked, part of your task will be to be providing recommendations to the Board of Supervisors based on the information that you hear, if you desire. If you don't think that anything needs to be recommended, you don't have to do that too. And then facilitating an open dialogue between election officials and residents through the work of this committee. Next slide. Under the resolution, it's expressed that you only have the purpose and duties that are expressly set forth in the resolution. So there may be times where I will be reminding you that you're looking into something that's not within your purview given the resolution. Your purely advisory role to the Board of Supervisors regarding the county's electoral process, providing a public forum for the sharing of information and the receipt of public input regarding the county's election process. You may develop and provide informational items and recommendations to the Board of Supervisors and the Registrar of Voters. You cannot direct or impede the duties of the Registrar of Voters or the Board of Supervisors. They retain their full discretion, and as some of you have heard too, when elections issues have come to the Board of Supervisors before, the Board of Supervisors also has a limited role with regard to elections because we do have an elected Registrar of Voters who oversees elections, and your advisory to the Board of Supervisors. Next slide. Again, only have the purpose and duties expressly set forth in the resolution. As I talked about earlier on the Public Records Act, you have access to non-exempt public records as set forth in the Public Records Act. Records and information in the county's possession that are prohibited by law from being publicly disclosed cannot be disclosed to the committee or any committee members. You cannot establish subcommittees or standing committees. And your agenda is determined by the Vice Chair of the Board of Supervisors based on input received from the EAC at the prior meeting under potential future agenda items. Next slide. Gosh, I should have brought my glasses. You can provide informational items and recommendations from the EAC must be submitted to the Vice Chair of the Board for placement on the Board's agenda. Like other advisory bodies, you do not have the power to place something on the Board of Supervisors' agenda directly. Agenda items that get on the Board of Supervisors' agenda come from county departments or the Board of Supervisors members themselves. Only those items and recommendations that are approved by official action of the committee and then upon concurrence of the Vice Chair of the Board are presented to the Board of Supervisors and the Registrar of Voters for review and consideration. The Chief Deputy Clerk of the Board, the wonderful Leanna Martinez, serves as the non-member secretary of the committee. She will be producing, her and her team, and Brendan, will be producing and distributing the meeting agendas as determined by the Vice Chair of the Board of Supervisors. They'll obtain the information and materials to present at committee meetings, and they arrange for county officials or staff to appear and present at committee meetings. And they prepare the action minutes of the committee meetings. So I will say though, one thing I hear is that while we will have, that the Board of Supervisors approve, or the Vice Chair approves the final agenda. If your body is wanting another elected official to come and speak at this meeting, we cannot compel that. So that will always be, you can't compel the sheriff to come in to speak. The Registrar of Voters, it will always be determined on whether or not they do want to come speak. Next slide. That's similar that the secretary will facilitate, and the secretary shall be solely responsible for seeking such information. Committee members should not request information from elected officials or county staff directly. Now, you may have a conversation or dialogue with the Board of Supervisors member that appointed you, and that's fine. That's not here, but really, again, making sure that everything is happening in an orderly fashion, that we are being mindful of the resources of the county staff. It all should be coming through the secretary. Next slide. So at the first full meeting, after the first full year, this is one of the items that was discussed during the board's meeting in creating this committee. One of the things that you will be tasked with is after the first full year of your establishment, you're considered whether or not to expand the committee membership to include additional members, to include a broader range of constituencies and background. One of the things that came up was maybe looking also about further disability access and having that type of role on this committee. Expansion of the committee requires an updated resolution of the Board of Supervisors. So your body cannot expand your committee on its own. The other, you serve without compensation or reimbursement for expenses unless expressly required by state law. Next slide. That's it. So with that, I don't know if there are any questions about your scope or authority.
I have a question. Regarding the year period for making recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. Now, how does that work with the, what you outline are normally lines of communication being through the vice chair as far as what gets put on agendas for future meetings, and how does this yearly recommendation that it was pointing out work?
So that year recommendation was meaning after your first full year, one of the things you're tasked with is you now met for a full year. Do you think that this committee needs to be expanded? That's like a task for that year. At any point prior to that, if your committee has had a discussion on an agenda item and you've reached that point where you now think you're at to that point where recommendations need to come to the Board of Supervisors, that would be acted on separately and could happen. That's not tied to a year cycle.
Okay. Thank you.
So you need a motion to accept?
Yes.
Not to accept the receive file.
I second. Motion to receive and file, moved by Committee Member Espinoisa, seconded by Committee Member Patterson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you for your time on this discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Gooch, we did not receive any requests to speak for item 11. I'd like to ask anybody in the audience if they'd like to speak on item 11, the item we just heard. Please proceed to the podium. Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you. We go on to item 12 with reference to the calendar. We have a copy of the calendar. It's basically Wednesdays every month.
Thank you, Chair Gooch. Good morning, Election Advisory Committee members. I'm Mia Martinez. I'm the Chief Deputy Clerk of the Board for the County of Ventura. Today I'm presenting the review and approval of the 2025 and 2026 Ventura County Election Advisory Committee calendars and establishing the time and location for regular meetings. Consideration has been taken in determining the meeting dates as specified in the County of Ventura Board of Supervisors Resolution 25-032, number 5, Rules and Procedures. Additional consideration has been taken to avoid holidays, and in order to mirror the Board of Supervisors summer recess period, no meetings were scheduled during the month of July. We've submitted 3 calendars for your review. They're also being displayed for your review up on the screen here. The meeting dates are identified with a turquoise colored box just for ease of viewing. We've submitted 3 calendars for your consideration. The first calendar is just the remainder of 2025, which identifies November 12th as the next scheduled meeting for 2025. The second calendar we have is for 2026. Again, for 2026, we have 2 options for review. So the first option for 2026 is identified as option number 1 in the upper left corner of the document. This option is probably the easiest of the 2 for 2026 calendars because it schedules the meetings on the second Wednesday of each even-numbered month, beginning with the month of February, and there are no conflicts for this calendar. The second option is identified as option number 2 in the upper left corner of the document. This option also schedules the meetings on the second Wednesday of the month. However, because of scheduling conflicts, we could not consistently hold a meeting in every odd number of month. So while we start out January, March, and May, after the summer recess, we come back, we move to August, October, and December. We are also seeking approval to establish the official meeting time and location of your regular meetings, which are as follows. Regular meetings are to be held at 9 a.m. located at the County Government Center at 800 South Victoria Avenue. With that, I'll turn this item back over to your committee for discussion, direction, and approval, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I'm in favor of the odd number of months so that it's consistent throughout the year, or whichever one it is, it's consistent where we don't have to
Option one.
switch back and forth. Option one, yes.
I have some comments about the proposed calendar. So as we're embarking upon election season, with a special election happening in just a matter of weeks, really November, and midterms are in less than 9 months, I think we have a lot of work to do, and a lot of input to receive from the public. So I would like to suggest that we actually meet monthly, not bi-monthly, and I'd just like to throw that out.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
My review of these calendars, I think we obviously need to accept the 2025 remaining time. And I also agree with option one. I think it's consistent, it's the easiest one, and I would, if no one else has any comments, I'd move to accept the 2025 remaining calendar and option one for 2026.
Further discussion? I would add that what is the process to add days as we got near an election, for instance? I think the question that was raised is a good one. If it's not going to, I think, affect us so much this year, but it might next year.
I'll defer to County Council.
So your board operates under a resolution that's being, I'm just very electric. The resolution that creates your body says that you shall hold regularly scheduled meetings once every other month. So that's the purview. The ability to schedule special meetings, so a meeting that would be not your normal calendar meeting, that's not something that is recognized under the Board of Supervisors, or no, sorry, under the Brown Act, the ability to have. But that would be something that if there was a desire for special meetings of this body, again, I think that the vice chair of the Board of Supervisors would have to agree with that as well. So today you are looking at approving, based on your resolution, your regular meeting schedule.
Yeah, and I would just, there's a motion on the floor, and I would second that motion for the adoption of the option one calendar, and sticking with what's currently outlined in our resolution.
And I would like to actually make a motion, I don't know if I can do that, no, there's one
Sure.
that's open. I'd like to make a motion that we approach our vice chair representative, Supervisor Gorell, and request that we have more flexibility in the schedule and the ability to add special meetings more often, considering the timeliness of the election season that's upon us.
Point of order.
Yes.
We have a motion and a second on the table. Do we want to address that and make this an agenda item as far as further scheduling?
It's not really a substitution.
No.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say, is that a formal substitute motion?
Yes.
Is there a second for the substitute?
No, hearing none. However, the sentiment that
I will
that is
say,
expressed, I mean, I can talk to the vice chair.
right, I would also add that I think that as you do have your next agenda item is the discussion of potential future agenda items, you're gonna be having that at every one of your regular meetings. If there is a need based on action for a special meeting, then I think that that's when you have that discussion with the vice chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion of the motion as proposed?
I just want to clarify for the record that motion not only includes adoption, so it's adoption of the 2025 meeting calendar as proposed, adoption of the 2026 option one calendar submitted, as well as adopting the meeting location of the Ventura County Government Center and the time of 9 a.m. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. That was moved by Committee Member Frank, second by Committee Member Espinoisa. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. We'll move on. If there are any public comments.
Please approach the podium if there are public comments.
I agree with the fact that you need to have meetings more. For example, you're not going to have another meeting until after this special election. So there's going to be this dead time between now and after the election and the election results for the one that we're having on November 4th, right? And so I think that there will be some issues that come up during the election. So how do we get to you? How do we speak to you? And then, especially in the primaries, you know, the vote by mail ballots can get moved in January, get sent out in January or February, and there's going to be issues. There's a primary in March, correct? June. In June. Okay, sorry. In June, so sometime in the April-May timeframe, those vote by mail ballots are going to be sent out. There's going to be questions and things that come up during that time period, and then you go through, was it a 60-day cycle for elections passed in? There's going to be issues coming in. You cannot have meetings every other month to address these things. You're an election advisory committee. That's what you do, right? And you are driven by the needs of the community, period.
Would you like to give your name for record?
My name is Mary Gallegos.
Thank you.
Yes, next speaker.
Thank you. My name is Lawrence Cruz. I would like to bring it to your attention, we have a very contentious election coming up in this special election. This was called specifically to alter the Constitution of the state of California on something the voters voted on. If you are not educating yourselves and immediately becoming involved in this process, you're basically like an appendage, you're an appendage that's just useless. I mean, this is very important. This is the Constitution of California, which supersedes anything decided by the County of Ventura. We are a republic. We are supposed to go by the laws of a republic. We are not a democracy, which decides between two wolves and one sheep who's for dinner. And that's basically what we're coming into. The voters have spoken, and now we have a governor who is trying to contradict the voice of the people through their voting. So I advise you, please take this into heavy consideration. You should meet before this next election, and you're going to be hearing a lot more. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hearing no further public comments, let's pass on to the next and final item, and that's committee member comments and discussion of potential future agenda items directly relevant to what we've already been talking about. A committee member may make a brief announcement, ask a question for clarification so long as there is no substantive discussion regarding the non-agendized subject matter, or may also request staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda subject to subsequent approval by the vice chair of the Board of Supervisors. That having been said, perhaps we could go in order of the supervisorial district, starting with number 1.
So, can you hear me okay? So I have a request for the members of our committee to consider. That would be something that would be presented before every single one of our meetings. And it has to do with what I would call ground rules for civil discourse. They are covered a lot in the code of conduct and decorum and all of that. But I think it would be helpful for us to have 5 simple statements that express how we want to comport ourselves as a committee and how we expect the public to comport themselves, and It's, the principles of civil discourse have come from a National Institute of Civil Discourse. It's in Arizona. There are multiple organizations that do provide kind of ground rules for civil discourse. And they often present them at the beginning of each meeting, whether it's projected on the screen as everybody comes in, or it's read every meeting. But it gives everybody the idea that we are here to listen, to learn, to be respectful, and to conduct the business of our meeting. So I'm going to just pass this down, and I would like to submit that these would be added to our agenda for next meeting as a discussion, and maybe additions or condition or modifications of them, or maybe accepted as they are, as something to just tell the public that we are here, we're listening, we respect them, we expect them to also respect the other members of the public and the committee members.
Thank you. Well, if the council would like to take a look at this.
So at this point, Committee Member Patterson had told me she was going to bring this up as a future agenda item. It is not anything for you to discuss today. She's sharing a copy of it with us now. You can certainly keep yours as informational if you want it, but if with the concurrence of the chair, the vice chair, if this will be a future discussion item, we'd have a vet that discussion then.
Thank you. Any further comment?
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. For me, quick comment. Thank the board very much for electing me as chair and your forbearance as I figure out what the heck I'm doing. Relevant to that question of what am I doing is, I'm not exactly sure how to phrase this, but I would appreciate hearing perhaps from the staff of the elections administration, where I could go to get more information that would brief me on the procedures and the details. And I'd love to see also what the training is for people. There are a number of technical questions that I am not simply familiar with. I'm not sure exactly how to phrase that, but it would be something I would request of Michelle Ascension's department. It would not necessarily entail her or somebody from her staff briefing us, but I'd like to know where I can go for that information. So, that could be an agenda item. I don't think so. I think it's simply a request that could be entered into and staff could respond.
Thank you. We can be sure to provide you with that information.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
First, I would very much like to thank everyone who attended today, members of the public. I know they couldn't all stay here throughout the entirety of the meeting, but it's really appreciative to have participation in this process. And it's the very first meeting. We didn't know what to expect. I thought it'd be a little bit more messy or awkward than it was. It actually went pretty well for a first meeting. But I think that, thanks for making this process, meaningful by your participation and your comments. Thing that really is important to me is that we're going to be taking our time to be part of this committee and taking it seriously, and I just really value, the credibility that we have as an advisory body, and that we maintain that above all else. I certainly support, the concept of trying to get, community participation in our electoral processes and making that something that we always strive to improve on and make better. And as far as the public comments we received, and I read those that were submitted beforehand as well, there were some things there that were expressed that I feel warrant. I think it would be useful to have at least some sort of staff report on whether or not they responded to any of the concerns expressed, whether they can respond to the concerns expressed, either as individuals or report back as an agenda item in the next meeting on some of those concerns raised. And if that's something that we need to put forward in the way of a motion, or
Thank you, Councilmember Espinoisa. Could you provide some specificity about exactly what you would like the staff to report back on?
what I'd like to know is, if they can tell us, there are some, technical items with the process. So if they can advise us that there are issues that they will look into, or whether they will review whether there's any, structural weaknesses that they are being pointed out, or claims made about election security. So if they could just report on that somehow, just.
Okay, so what I'm noting is election security, that's a question you have regarding technical issues and concerns addressed.
Right.
Okay.
And so that we can educate the public, since, because I don't want to just, we don't want to dismiss out of hand when people have concerns or raise, but the comments I read, the public comments I read, were not really like adding, what actual meetings took place and what efforts they made in order to express these to the elections division before we convened. So that wasn't mentioned. It was just a lot of concerns, observations that were alleged, and so I just would like the elections division to be able to speak specifically to those things they can in terms of the security weaknesses or concerns raised.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi. Okay, I have some written comments that I'm going to, and I have a few proposed agenda items, and I have a few motions to make, since I tried making them earlier and I was told to make them at the end. So I'm assuming this is the proper place to do that. Yes. So I'll keep those for the last so we can vote on them. I'm hoping that this might wrap up a little bit of what had been echoed already about requesting some information and getting our brains wrapped around all this election stuff. It's a lot. So basically, I'd like to make a motion to propose an agenda item that requests that this committee conduct a full review of all elections-related agenda items, concerns, and comments in spoken or written form brought to the Board of Supervisors by a supervisor or other elected official or by the public in the last 5 years. Items subject to review would include, but not be limited to, all elections-related reports, letters, emails, presentations, videos, public comments, and evidence presented, including those directly related to a Board of Supervisors meeting, agenda item, or not. So the committee can prepare, in accordance with Resolution 25032, which established our committee, Sections 3F and 4C, I'd like to make another motion to, I don't know if I can do this, to request that the clerk provide all materials, reports, letters, emails, video presentations, public comments, and any other relevant election-related materials that have been presented to the Board of Supervisors in person or in writing since January of 2020. That will be provided to each member of this committee for review as soon as possible and before the next committee meeting. So I'm going to stop there.
Okay.
Motion proposed, is there a second?
So we don't need to take motions on these future agenda items.
Okay, perfect.
What this is going to be is each meeting you have, we will have this possible future agenda items where each member of the committee will be able to put forward what they would like as a future agenda item, because you can't get into a lot of long-winded discussion about it now. Ultimately, the vice chair will be the one that will be putting forward based on this input, the information received, what the agenda will be.
Okay, great.
So,
I can provide this in writing if you want.
thank you. That was I was writing furiously.
No,
but-
no. I did not expect you to catch all that.
Thank you.
Just to clarify then, this proposal would go directly to Gorell, to the vice chair,
Correct.
Thank you.
without further comment by other members of the.
You can't have a long substantive discussion about it right now.
Okay, proposed agenda item number 2. In the wake of concerns about election interference after the 2016 election, the Obama administration declared elections as critical infrastructure as a matter of national security. In March of this year, President Trump, I have a lot to cover.
You're not under any time constraint.
Okay, great. I will slow down.
We want to hear you.
Okay,
It's hard
thank you.
to
I was
take
like,
notes.
I have so much to say.
Very hard.
Okay, I will slow down. Do you want me to repeat that?
No.
Okay. The Obama administration declared elections as critical infrastructure as a matter of national security. In March of this year, President Trump issued an executive order on election integrity entitled Preserving and Protecting the Integrity of American Elections. It includes the following provisions and more, but I'll highlight a few. It requires documentary government-issued proof of U.S. citizenship on voter registration forms. There are conditions for federal election-related funds on states complying with the integrity measures set forth by federal law. It directs the updating of the Voluntary Voting System Guidelines 2.0 and security standards for voting equipment, which includes requiring voter verifiable paper ballot record and not using ballots in which the counted vote is contained with a barcode or a QR code. It reaffirms and takes appropriate action against states that count ballots received after Election Day in federal elections, and more. States must follow the United States Constitution, this is me speaking now, and federal election laws. The directives in the EO are well within the executive branch's constitutional authority. How is the state of California planning to comply with these directives, since many California laws and procedures have become misaligned with federal law and even go against the California Constitution? What action has the ROV taken so far? And what is the plan to fulfill these requirements, since several of them are not aligned with Ventura County's established procedures? So I would like to propose an agenda item to invite Ventura County Registrar of Voters, Michelle Ascension, to present to the committee the plan for implementation of these directives in Ventura County, including what has been done so far or will be done to fulfill the requirements in time for the special election on November 4th and in time for the June 2026 primary election and in time for the November 2026 general election. So that is my second agenda item proposal.
And that will be submitted to Vice Chair, Board of Supervisors.
Okay, now I have unfinished business from earlier that I'd just like to readdress.
Brevity is.
Yes, this is going to be very brief. I'd like to request that we live stream and provide recordings of these meetings to the public for greater participation, and that we allow people to make public comment via Zoom. And that's one. I don't know if, do I need to make a motion for that, or is that a future agenda item?
One note that I will bring up, that's probably a future agenda item. One thing I will bring up is that in the board letter, when this committee was proposed, and in the discussion on the day when it was voted on, what was stated several times in writing and verbally is that the development of this committee would be cost neutral, meaning that it would not add cost. Now, I'm sure all of you, understand life, and head county council sitting here, CEO sitting here. They're clearly cost of the committee, but it's staff time, right? And so beyond staff time, the thought was that there would be no additional cost. In order to add a Zoom component so that people can, and a live stream component, that absolutely adds cost. There's no way around that. That's the General Service Agency, that's technology, that's additional bodies. In line with many of our other advisory and committee meetings, we do not have the live streaming and the Zoom because of the cost
We learned that during COVID. It's convenient and there's a place for it, but the costs do add up and they are not insignificant. So unless there were allocation of funding for this committee, that would not be something we could do at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That really helps clarify why it was not implemented. I want to be sensitive to many of the public comments and concerns about broader participation and helping people who are disabled who can't make it, who are working who can't make it. This is obviously Wednesday mornings, so it's challenging at best to get the amount of public participation that we could. And then, yeah, that's probably it. I think that's it. Am I still allowed to make any more comments about just general comments?
Yes, but let me clarify, you didn't propose a motion, you proposed something though that we would advise or pass on to Verbal, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And in my final comments, I would just like to say, I know there are some who don't think that this committee is necessary. They're happy with how our elections are run, and they have trust in the systems and people that run them. And I think that's great, and that they're more than entitled to their opinion. However, there are tens of thousands of Ventura County voters who do not trust the policies, procedures, and systems that are used for elections here and statewide. And trust is the operative word. We have a trust problem, and the only way to address a trust problem is to have a public forum like this where people can come forward and share their concerns. I have more to say, but in the interest of brevity, I think I'll just somehow enter the rest of my comments into the record. Can I do that? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Pretty much everything has been said. I'm looking forward to participating. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, were there any further comments?
Yes. I have one other question. I am still not clear how we, as the committee, address the issues that have been brought up by public comments submitted, public comments here, because there are a huge number of them, and it seems as if we ought to be able to focus and do it in some sort of a logical fashion, and maybe attack this area one time, and this area next time, and this area next time. It's not clear to me how this committee is going to address all of the issues that are being presented, and we know that the next meeting there'll be more issues presented, or the same issues presented again. How is this committee supposed to function?
Good question. The perfect answer.
I'll give you the legal answer. You raise a good point, and Committee Member Espinoisa talked about that there are some of the public comments that were raised that he has questions on the public comments received. Part of acting as a public agency, you don't have the immediate ability to address public comments because we've got to go through the Brown Act and has to have an item that's listed on the agenda to be talked about in a substantive fashion. So with each agenda, that's why we have this possible future agenda items. In order for staff to be able to bring forward recommendations to Supervisor Gorell, to the Vice Chair for putting on your agenda, we need to know from you with enough, I don't want to say specificity because I'm not asking exactly, but enough general idea, what is the topic that you want to talk about the next time. And we can't just say elections, because that's so your body, as you go through, and this is the first meeting, that we are in the thick of the very beginning. It's really figuring out what are your priorities as a committee. You're going to hear a lot of public comments from a lot of people with varying differences and strongly passionate opinions about their priorities. But as a committee, what are your priorities moving forward? I don't think that that's anything that is expected of you to know today. So, but that is going to be something. So as Committee Member Cohen had, she's got some priorities that are a focus for her that she'd like to see discussed in the future. So that's the kind of thing to be thinking about for future meetings. when you do see issues that are coming in, the public comments that are received, if you've got questions about them that need to be a future agenda item, we need to know enough about that then to just say the public comments. And we've gotten, there were 15 public speakers today, 8 or 12 letters received. So in order for staff to put together agendas, we're going to need to know from you as you're moving forward. And like I said, it's not anything today. What is your priorities, unless you've got some priorities at this moment?
Yeah, that was my question, is can we give you some priorities that we can maybe address so we can begin to check them off the list of questions?
That would be your possible future agenda items right now, if there's something that you're thinking of.
I think that the question of the actual voting security and the observers who watched the stick in memory chips or whatever they were putting in, or observing from afar and not being able to see things. I think the observation process and what can be seen and what the explanation is for what those criticisms were is an item that could be addressed by the elections office. I think the issue of hand counting all of the votes is an issue that could be quickly addressed with data, facts about how that works, and the fact that there's a law that says that we don't do hand counting unless the election is less than 5,000 votes. Just so that we can maybe have a couple of items that we can discuss and maybe have future discussion or make a decision on.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
As a lawyer, I think the law is the priority consideration. I think it should be required reading, honestly, required reading. I don't know about you, but I carry a copy of the United States Constitution, the little pocket version, in my car. But we have something called the State of California Election Code. That's a set of statutes passed by the legislature when challenged, upheld by our courts, California's state law, because the states have been provided the authority to conduct their elections. So that's why we have an elections code. And I think it should be required reading for this committee to read so that we can see what the parameters are of our considerations. Because we can sit here and blab all we want, but if the county doesn't have the authority under the law, then we're wasting our time, we're wasting the public's time, and it's just a total waste. So, let's back it up and see from whence we came in order to maybe have a vision of where we are able to go. So I would encourage everyone, it's not a big volume, just leaf through the education code, the election code, and something strikes your fancy, dive deep and start reading about it. But that's where it should start.
Yeah. Well, Councilman Norris could give us another presentation.
I have some comments about that. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I did forget one thing. In the prior presentations to the Board of Supervisors, there has been a presentation by Michelle Ascension on the functions of the election division of her office. That I think would be something that we could pull out of archives, and maybe we could have a movie meeting and we could watch that movie. We could also watch the movie that was made at the Board of Supervisors when the contract was extended for the purchase of the ballot counting machines from Dominion, because there was a presentation at that Board of Supervisors meeting as well. There was extensive discussion on both of those items. So I know that's on video. People want to get that. I don't think this committee has, and I think it was brought up earlier by council, that we don't have the authority to call in an elected. Michelle Ascension is an elected.
You can always invite.
She said we can.
And we can invite, okay? I would not be offended if the invitation was politely declined, because, this is, it's kind of highly unusual to pull in an elected to explain the job they're doing as an elected official. This the wrong venue in my view. So that's where I stand on that. I think we need a little background on the law first and foremost.
I'd like to respond to that.
Briefly.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
Chair. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with you about everybody really on this committee needs to do their best from a layman's perspective to bring yourselves up to speed on California election codes, California Constitution and the United States Constitution, of course. In terms of the laws that apply to our county and to the Board of Supervisors, whom we pretty much just represent, or we are an arm of, I guess, or an advisory board body too. Council North gave a wonderful presentation 2 summers ago about what the board's authority is with respect to elections. Because ROV Ascension is an elected official, there was question back and forth about what the board authority was in that arena. And she wrote a report, submitted it, it's part of the public record for that meeting. You can download it. And I also submitted, I went through her report, pointed out some other issues and kind of made some counter arguments, cited California Election Code and the California Constitution and the US Constitution. And there it is. So both my report, Council North's report, is available for public download. It's part of the package that I had requested when I did the agenda item request. All materials submitted to the Board of Supervisors, presentations should be made available. Michelle Ascension's presentation about her policies and procedures that she made in front of the Board of Supervisors is available on the Elections Division website. You can just go there and watch it. I think that was pretty much, but I agree with you 100%. Everybody needs to come up to speed as best they can on the laws and what the Board of Supervisors has the authority to do and what they do not have the authority to do.
Thank you, Committee Member Cohen. I would just say that the presentation I gave, I believe it was in June of 2024 on the board agenda.
Yes.
Yeah, and Committee Member Cohen's response is there as well.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, the more we could efficiently have, video to see, because there is so much that we could potentially get involved in. With reference to that, I have 2 points that I've been mulling over. One is to encourage the members of this committee for site visits in election day. Nothing is quite so convincing that to see something with your own eyes, really test out what's going on. Secondly, the thing I've been mulling over, and it came from public comments, and so I just didn't put 2 and 2 together, is that we do not have a meeting before the November election, and one of our central missions is to be a forum of discussion and to build public confidence. And I think I would be very comfortable to suggest to the Vice Chair of the Board of Supervisors that we consider having a meeting in mid-October. I mean, that's our function, or major function is to be an avenue for the public to voice their concerns. And I think we'd really be missing something if we don't take advantage of doing that, but also regard that November election as a kind of teaching opportunity as well with regard to next year, which is going to be very contentious, I'm sure.
Could I offer that having our meeting after the election might be more worthwhile because one, we'll have all visited a site during the election, I assume, and the people making public comments will also have experience in the election, and then we could maybe surprise, everything has gotten fixed and nobody has any complaints. I don't think that's going to happen, but I mean, there may be other issues that came up that, you know, are more urgent or more critical. I think a meeting before the election is just going to promote more speculation, concern, worry, anxieties, rather than actually addressing any specific problems.
So Chair, I would like to let you know that pre-LAT testing is happening right now. It started Monday, and it's happening this week. That's the pre-testing of all the computer systems that are involved with the election. That is an observable activity, and we have people that are already, that I'm aware of, that are already observing.
Committee of order. Committee of
way beyond.
I wanted, yeah.
Thank you.
I was getting there. I was like always trying to find when's the right
Okay.
point to not interrupt too much. So I will say, your board just adopted your standard meeting calendar. You were tasked with every other meeting or every other, so you've done that. There will be a meeting in November. I recognize that it's after the election. We've heard a desire and the chair has expressed a desire for a special meeting. I think that that is something that has to be discussed with the vice chair. So I don't think that that's anything that needs to be vetted out here. If it gets scheduled and you can attend, great. If you don't feel the need to attend, that's fine as well. So.
Thank you. Further comments? I know it's getting late. Worst thing you can do is get between people and their lunch. Any further comments from the board? Hearing none, I would like to, do I need a motion?
Nope, you can just go ahead and adjourn.
No, just say sayonara.
You get some time to
But I would like to thank the staff, thank mostly the public that attended, but also sent letters. Supervisors Gorell in particular, but also the Board of Supervisors, and lastly, my own little committee, which, you know, we're serving, you know, gratis, because we love Ventura and et cetera and all that, but they're a cost to us, and, you know, I thank my fellow members. Having said that, lunch.